Welcome back, everybody, to Scaled Success Reptile Podcast. We are here today with Brandon Melo Hogs. What's going on today, bud?
Hey, hanging in there, ready to talk about hog noses.
Hey, we're always ready to talk about hognose, you know?
We
So
already were.
this is why I love doing this, because it gives me an excuse to come and talk about hognose and reptiles.
And I haven't done an expo in a few months either, so
So you're itching.
time to get
It's
it
that
out.
time. Yeah. All right, man. Before we get into, I'm gonna shout out the sponsors and stuff of that. And everybody, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, drop a comment down below. If you guys have any specific questions and that stuff, drop a super chat. So first off, start off with USARK Florida. If you guys are part of this, the reptile community or any exotic animal community, make sure you guys go and get a membership with USARK Florida. And they are the spearhead here when it comes to legislations against animals here in Florida. And then we have US ARC National Chapter. If you need a membership to both of them, because they work together in against any legislations, making sure you responsible reptile keepers and animal keepers are protected against any legislations that will come after your animals. And now on to the Patreon. So we launched the Patreon this year. We're building a community here, where inclusive community, where everybody's welcome from beginner to expert, either hognose, Barons racers, Madagascar giant hognose, and any other reptile want to build a community. Make sure you guys check the first link in the description below to try to join here. Now to our sponsors. We have Sea Serpents. If you guys are looking for a great incubator or a PVC rack, make sure to check out Sea Serpents. Chris is the owner, great support of the community, and great best community service and customer service that you have ever gotten in the reptile industry. Now, Blake's Exotic Feeders. If you guys want to add a variance in your feeding your hognose or any other reptile, make sure to check out Blake's Exotic Feeders. One thing I gotta mention is that this year I've been feeding all my females and my holdbacks, basically my full collection on exotic, Blake's Exotic Feeders, the quails, and I have seen a difference in the females that are breeding. They are developing eggs, they are packing on weight, but are staying slender, and I bring that to because the quails have a lower fat than mice. So that's a really cool thing to think about. And we'll get more into that during the episode. Now we have Husbandry Pro. If you guys are looking to get your record keeping to the next level, make sure you guys are on top of everything that's going on with your collection. You need Husbandry Pro. Use Clover 60 to get a 60-day free trial. So again, anything that we use that I mentioned there is, products and companies we've built relationships with. If you guys have any questions about it, drop a comment down below or DM me on Instagram and I'll get you any info on that. So Brandon, what's going on, man? How things going for you today?
Oh, hanging in there, going well, just excited. I mean, we talked about it, like I said previously, we talked a little bit before, and we both got some pretty cool projects going on, stuff that we're both excited to see, and especially, coming around to the 2025 to 2026 breeding season, which I know saying 2026 already sounds weird, but I'm saying it's like when you talk about snake breeding, when I've come to realize in the little amount of time is that when you have projects that you really want to go towards, you end up kind of like mentally time jumping a little bit. And soon enough, you end up being like years deep into a project and you're like, man, that time already went by. Like, that's crazy. So, I mean, it's definitely crazy with the whole reptile breeding to think that like some of the stuff that I was just like talking to you about a couple of years ago working on is now like already coming about. And it's cool to see.
Yeah, man. And I think that's the coolest thing about, sitting down and talking about future projects and stuff like that. It's sometimes running off, having like somebody to bounce it back about and like, hey, is this my idea is a little too crazy, or like, do you think it could be good? And it's like most of us are gonna push each other. We're like, no, go ahead, go try that because somebody's got to do it.
Yeah.
So
well, that's like, for example, I have a female that a lot of people actually have animals from. It's the Sable het hypo female. I
Mhm.
bought from someone who bought it from Dan Eby, who says it's a Sable het hypo, but I haven't proven the het hypo yet.
Mm.
Going on word for that, and I'm telling people that they're 50 het, but I haven't proven it yet, so I also tell them that. But I do have a male that's supposed to be 100% het permafrost, also unproven. So I have mental dilemmas on projects like that, whereas I can test that out because I really want to make oxides. Like the guys over at Fathom, I
Mhm.
love when they post their oxides. I see them and I'm like, some people are like, they look just like a Mai Tai, and I'm like, no, like
No.
there's another level to it. They have much, I don't want to say like more softer colors, but they're not as rusty looking as like
Mhm.
what I'm used to with a Mai Tai. So like I really want to see one of those in person. So
Yeah.
it's like, do I do that pairing? Or for example, Avery has a male named Smudge, who's this really nice high iridophore, really flaky, crazy looking super Arctic conda that's het for sunburst. And do that pairing and get some really cool Arctic sables potentially that are Arctic sable condas as well, or do you wait and like, so it's like, what project do you end up doing?
Mhm.
It's like, what do you end up going for? Because with one, it's like you're bringing a cool new project or newer that's not crazily worked on, whereas like the other one has some really really cool colors, and it's like I don't know if you've seen Smudge at all, but
I have. Yeah.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
super cool looking. So
Yeah.
it's like, man, it's like I have a visual Sable female, and that paired to Smudge would be like fire. Like I don't
Yeah.
know, I'd be like, that's a really cool pairing.
No.
But this is that would be the third year in a row then that I'm skipping that female, trying to prove out that hypo though, and that
Mm.
like kind of drives me a little bit crazy in my head, because the first year was to a super Arctic toffee belly, and the second year was to an Arctic lav toffee. So this year it's like I kind of feel like kind of mentally a little bit obligated to try and prove her out,
Yeah.
but
I agree.
but if she doesn't, want to lock with the male, then I can't be completely upset. But I definitely like just kind of bouncing, like you said, bouncing ideas off other people is
Mm.
like seeing what someone else wanted to like give an opinion on. It's like I think at least for one season, because the next season I might do the same exact thing, and we'll never know. And
Yeah. Yeah,
uh,
man.
it, well, the possibility of hypo popping out if someone bred it to a hypo, though, stuff like that with
That's
animals that
true.
they've gotten.
Yeah. And that's such a dilemma time sometimes too, when trying to figure out your pairings um and then the limited, because we probably have, we have a limited amount of animals. We're not large breeders and stuff like that.
No.
So you have a limited amount of options too, and you want to try to produce what makes you the happiest to see. And then you also want to see some cool projects, right? So I think that's another dilemma that we go through as breeders. It's like, all right, do we breed 100% for us, or do we make some cool stuff just because it's cool,
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's like a middle ground, which I don't think I've yet to kind of balance
mhm,
yet. Because I've noticed with like a lot of my stuff, sometimes it sits a little bit on Morph Market, and I can't be too upset about that. The market's pretty competitive right now, and there's a
mhm,
lot of really crazy animals that are coming onto it. And it's like, even when we were first like kind of getting into it, it's like where it is now, just like scrolling through Morph Market, it's like my mind gets boggled sometimes.
yeah,
And it's like, it's still like, it's so cool to still be able to look at new animals getting posted and get that same feeling I did when I first saw like a moonstone,
mhm,
where it's like, what it, not to be weird, but it sounds like a legendary Pokemon kind of situation, where like you see it and you're like, that one's definitely like there's something going on. And it's
yeah,
like with the moonstones, for example, like they look crazy, but then you step it up and add Conda in, and then all of a sudden they look like this space rock, aptly named so,
mhm,
the moonbeam. And it's like just having that slight variation with the Conda in just makes like everything explode. I love Bubs anything, Super Arctic Conda, like
yeah.
Arctic Lav Conda, just everything.
Yeah, man. That combo is super arctic concept with anything is so cool. The variation, it's one of those things that once those eggs start, and that's what we were talking about, right? I've
Mm-hmm.
been trying to hit some super arctic stuff, and most of my parents will have conda in as well, or even super condas. And just over the 2 years, I just haven't had the odds, haven't been great, and then the amount of eggs to be able to produce super arctic condas or super condas. And but one day I can't wait to see that. Hopefully this season, to see the variation that will come out of these eggs if I do hit a couple, super Arctics and stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're mentioning that, and I know, I think out of, I think it was 33 eggs from 2 years ago, the Arctic Lab Taw female to a Arctic albino female. Out of, I think it was 30ish. It might, let's say 28 to 33 in that range. So there's probably around that many, and 3 popped out that were super Arctics from Arctic to Arctic.
That's
which
great.
If you do a Punnett, if you do a Punnett square though, it should be a quarter of them. Yeah. So I'm sitting there like, all right, the math isn't mathing. Yeah. But then, this was my famous, like, I wouldn't stop talking about it story for a while. But Athena, who is my the female that was in the picture that you had for the opening title, that female sold from Jeff Galewood. I love that line of his bub stuff. 10 out of 10 is my favorite, like, snake. You said favorite snake, and my mind goes to her immediately every time. I'll rave about her for forever. That's a snake that, like, when people are like, if you only could keep, it's like, it's hard because I got my first snake, but then I also got her. So like, that makes it tough. But not to go too far off track, she was supposed to just be a conda, a bub's daddy. So she bred to the Arctic Lab Taw female and produced 21 or 23. I only say 21 because I told you beforehand 2 of them passed away, unfortunately, a day after, but produced 23 condas, all condas, 23 for 23 condas on a conda to non-conda pairing, which with the math on it was 1 in 4 quadrillionths, which was like 3 times rarer than a human being being born. Yeah. So I either was the luckiest snake breeder ever, or she's just a super crazy looking conda. Yeah. Which more than likely that was the case. Unfortunately, I didn't get to prove it out last year. She dudded last year, so she recouped this year. I'm going to try her again, and I'm going to pair her to, last year I didn't. I paired her to a Sunburst 66 Axanthic just to see what those might have looked like, but dudded on that. So this year, I think I'm going to pair her to a conda just to be like, well, there's the super condas. Yeah. So I have the potential to pair her to the brother of the female you have for me, which is the super Arctic conda that's had Lav Toffee albino, but that would be back child back to parent, which isn't necessarily the worst, but I've got other options I can do. So there's potential I might use I believe he's third gen Purple Extreme Red Yeti that I got from Jeff. I think he's third gen. I'm not sure which ones he's selling on Morph Market right now. I think if he has 5th gen stuff, then he is a 4th gen. Yeah. I'm not sure. Let's say third gen. Let's just say third gen to be sure. But he's like this beautiful strawberry milk pink, and to get that on a Yeti is like super, super crazy because that Axanthic is supposed to take that away. But Jeff has spent quite a long time trying to perfect that, as well as really honing in on what's it called, that Color Blast line as well. 4th gen. Yeah, man. All right, Avery's watching, so he's a 4th gen. So okay, there we go. So he's a 4th gen male, so he's got some really, really good lineage into him. And I actually, now that we're talking about it, I probably will try to breed him to Athena, because then those could make some Arctic albino super condas. And if she is a super conda, just condas, then it won't make any normals. And then actually, now I'm thinking about that and talking out loud, probably will try that, because she's got that really nice pink, and she's got the high rate of 4 colors on him, or her rather. So I think that would actually be really cool. Thanks, Dave. Sharing for me in the chat. That's funny.
But yeah, and then before we get too much into like 2025, let's talk about 2024. What did your season look like? And then what was your top production that probably your holdback, right? Something you held back from last year.
Yeah. So my top stuff that people probably would call my top stuff that I made last year was the Super Arctic Snow stuff, which it's nothing brand new, but it's brand new to me. And I wanted to make this stuff because ever since I saw Eslin post the Super Arctic Snow male that he had a few years back, I looked at that thing and I went like, you know, when like you're looking at something and you're like, why aren't more people like looking at this? This is like super, super cool. And
Yeah.
I'm looking at it because like the super Arctic colors on them, it gets completely taken away with that. Like super Arctics have like a dirtier, more like eggshell kind of white, whereas like these turn into like a really really shiny like snow, like actual like flashing back at you with like super
Mm-hmm.
purple and silver saddles. And admittedly, when they hatched, I know that people have problems with this with the super Arctic sunburst stuff. I couldn't tell the difference between a lot of stuff, like if it was like a super Arctic snow, or if it was an Arctic snow, or if it was like a Bub's Daddy, or if it was like a Sub Zero. Like they all just looked like really bright and pink. And it took me like a little while, like even after their pre-lay sheds, like a few of them, even the girl that I have listed on Morph Market, which is kind of just like for people to see and stuff. I got to update her picture because she's finally shut out now, and she went from like that kind of brighter color. Now she's like more of a deeper, cooler, like purplish silver. And when they transform like from that shed from the first one to the second one, it really like confirms it for you that like, oh, all right, this one definitely is like a super Arctic snow versus like a regular albino. Whereas like I feel like with the sunburst stuff, that's a little bit easier because they have like that crazy bright pink color to them.
Yeah. You know,
But
with that, what is there? You said what people would think would be the cool stuff. Was there your cool for you? Was it there's difference? What
yes,
was it?
so for me, it's like I mentioned it to you like a little bit, which
Yeah.
was the Arctic Lav Toffee albino or Lav Toffee Sable stuff that I made. So I've noticed like a few other people making that project with much higher end animals, and I'm like, I will get there one day. But it's like those pairings, I'm like, man, that's like so like I look at pairings and I'm like, that's so badass. Like uh I started with like a pretty not low end, but nothing like too crazy. I started with a
Mm-hmm.
Conda that was triple het snowburst and a het storm cloud 50 het albino. So it's not like, and at the time the highest of high end was still like the super sunburst stuff and all of that, and like permafrost stuff and like all the stuff you could just oogle over for hours. And it's like looking at that stuff, I was just like, man, I can't buy that, and I still can't buy a lot of that stuff. But I hope to make it. And 2 seasons in a row, I got really lucky. I hit storm clouds 2 seasons in a row, so people like that stuff a lot. And I'm just, I'm proud of the animals that I like just hoped would like pop out the animals, and seeing hets and hoping for possets and seeing them actually like, it feels like magic seeing them go through with it and actually have just like a normal animal to a normal animal, and then popping out like a blue snake. Or for example, the pairing that did the super Arctic snow stuff was like definitely a higher end pairing than what makes my snowburst stuff. For example, the
Mm-hmm.
male is a super Arctic albino conda that was 66 het axanthic, who proved to be het axanthic from Nate Miracle and Miracle Reptile, who we've talked with, and he's a buddy, and makes some super cool stuff. He just hatched out it might be an Arctic PPA, but probably just a PPA Super Conda 66 het lav, but popped out some super cool stuff like not too long ago. And I have a really, really cool lab from him that's super purple. You've seen his super red stuff. He just popped out a really funky one. Some of the stuff with lavender, I couldn't explain it, and I probably need to talk more to Jeff about, because I don't know if you've noticed, but like there's someone overseas named Bavarian Hognoses who has some really cool lines of lavender,
Mm-hmm.
which look nothing like the lavenders that we have over here.
Yep.
But I'm presuming that they've bred lavender to lavender or other het lavenders, and it pops those out. And they know for a fact it's the same lavender gene. So if that's the case, then like what the heck's going on with that?
Mm-hmm.
And not to go too far off track again, but the female out of the pairing with the male from Nate was from Eslin, which was a Arctic Yeti, which is an Arctic snow conda. And I mean, just she's one of my favorites too. Yeah, she's just like a super beautiful snake. And once they ended up getting their size to them, they look they really really shine. And it's like, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people don't like care about the discrepancy of it based on pictures with like that Arctic in there and the super Arctic, because I do find like a lot of people being like, oh no, like I have one of those. And I'm like, I don't think you have this morph specifically, but you probably have like a snow or something close to it. And it's like in pictures, it's like, man, it's like kind of like the LG situation where it's like, if only this could capture this photo. But like that would be like to like go back to the point, that'd be like a much higher end pairing in my opinion than like the Conda triple het to like the well, let's say she's like a maroon, because she's a pretty dark snake. She's admittedly not like a normal one, but she's a very dark maroon saddled normal that had the potential to be a Posset albino and didn't turn out to be so. But I can't complain about making storm clouds. So it's like that pairing, making me a storm cloud and making me Sable Condas and Axanthic Condas and stuff like that, versus a pairing where the super Arctic snows were really cool. I made a super snow, 2 super Arctic snows, an Arctic snow super Conda, and then a couple in the mix there, like a super Arctic het. No, super Arctic albino. There was no planes. So super Arctic albino het snow. But then also in that same clutch where I made a super snow, I made an Arctic albino het snow, which was the lowest odds. Like it was, or the worst gene combo, but had the highest odds. So it was 1 in 16 to make that. So it was the hardest thing to make, which was the worst genes, and I still did it. So I had higher odds of making super snows than I did Arctic albino het snow, and it still popped out in that clutch. And that's kind of like what I love about hog noses. And I mean, any snake in general, I mean, or breeder in general will know this, is that getting those crazy variations in clutches, like, yeah, it's cool to breed a snow to a snow and know that all snows are coming out. But like when you throw in incomplete dominance and random genes that might pop out, it like keeps the kid in you alive when you're doing it.
Yeah. And I think the variance in a clutch is important too. I don't think having everything looking the same, it's good, first of all, for like us personally seeing different things pop up and stuff like that. But then also, like myself, I'm running a business with the reptiles and stuff like that. So like having a variance and different options for people, if it's either a double visual, triple visual, but then having hets as well, where people it's easier to get into the project, is another important thing for me as well, to be able to do that. So I don't think the always doing visual to visual, double visual to visual, it's always the best thing in my eyes. So I think I like the doing the heads to the visuals, and then especially too, we're talking about, we talked about lavender, where we're still in that gray area of, do we breed lavender to lavender, or do we stay on the safe side and do head to lavender, head to visual?
Well, I mean, admittedly, I'm not doing lavender to lavender with that stuff. So in the sake of outcrossing in mind, Westbert, I believe 8420 or 8420 Hognose Road is his name now, for his business. I got 2 Lav Toffee males from him. One, well, their names are Jekyll and Hyde. You can guess why. They hold up to their names, but I have a lot of Lav Toffee stuff I hold back, because if you speak to me, I love lavender toffees. Why? Because when I look at them, I go, yep. And
they're cool, man. They're cool.
Yeah. They're just sick. Like, oh, you've seen them in person, because you've probably been to Eslands and seen them.
Yeah, I've seen them in person.
There's something about them. They're kind of just like a little sakura flower. And
I don't have any here. Sorry, you're gonna have to do the refrigerator for today. My daughter asking for stuff for the dogs to feed the dog.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're cool. And let me ask you something. How old are your Lav Toffees? Because this is something that came to my mind after I saw them at Eslands.
So they are both going to be breeding age right around, I believe they were born mid 2022. So I'll probably end up using them in around October.
Okay.
So they're approaching 2 years old.
Now,
I got them the same time. What's it called? As the Sable girl from you.
Gotcha. Okay. So, Toffee has the infamous, paradox and stuff like that. Are you seeing paradox in that combo?
Yeah.
You are okay.
Yeah.
That's
So
interesting. Okay.
their bellies definitely. Their backs I haven't seen. So like I have some really cool RBE toxic stuff from Rick Graveson.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I forget why his his new business name is escaping my mind, but really great guy. His toxic line, which I have an RBE toxic superconda breeder female. Oh, whoops. But and a couple males from him. They have this really thin belly stripe, which I've never seen before. It's like when you see a road like being sprayed, but like you could tell the guy didn't like do it correctly and messed up and just sees like dashes,
Mm-hmm.
but they're
Mm-hmm.
all varying sizes and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. It's like that on her belly. It's really, really weird. And it's super, super like thin, and her white walls are like super close together. And then down her belly, there's black speckles of paradoxing. Whereas like the males have it on their back and down on their bellies too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm definitely interested. I tried to breed the Arctic Laugh Toffee male to her. Unfortunately, she didn't want him. She didn't want anyone this year.
Oh man.
So yeah, I know, such a good female too. It's like
Yeah.
you just sit there, and she's such an adorable girl. It's like I've talked to Avery about it, and it's like that's one of the snakes. Also, I'm just like, man, this is like a perfect hognose. I'm like, it's hard to like
Yeah.
not want to make cool stuff with them. And yeah, for instance, like with her, if she did pair with that male, there would be Arctic toffee bellies and Arctic toffee belly condos that were het for Mercury, and that'd be a super cool project.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, hopefully, maybe next year she wants to go with that male. Brumate her again, see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, might bring so like a couple of years ago, my brumation temperatures were like 52, but I think I brought them up to 56 last year. And I did have notice, like I'm not saying that 56 is a bad temp, but I did have noticeable differences with my females. It doesn't seem like as many of them ovulated for whatever reason. I don't know what it may be. I don't think the
Mm-hmm.
4 degree temperature difference did something. Maybe it did, but I didn't have the females that I expected to ovulate like go through with it. And yeah, and not to downturn it a little bit, but one of the females that I did pair with the Arctic Lav Toffee was a Super Arctic Conda that was het for Toffee, or supposedly het for Toffee. The person who I got it from said she was, but uh, you can't be too sure until you breed them.
Yeah.
She got paired 8 months ago, and until a couple weeks ago, unfortunately, she passed away. It really, really stinks. And pretty much where the story is going is she was completely fine, completely healthy, completely hydrated. And it's hard not to blame myself, but every single person I talk to always is like, it wasn't your fault. But I noticed when she was like not coming to her front of her bin when I usually do my checks, it
Mm-hmm.
was super weird. And then I open the bin and I find her like completely dehydrated and almost like unlifelike. And I'm like, what's going on? You were completely fine 2 days ago. And I look down at her bottom and I see the outline of 2 eggs. And
Mm.
I'm like, you get fed normally, you looked fine, you did everything.
Yeah.
Where did these come from? I was like, what happened? And Avery, my amazing girlfriend, who helps me so much with pretty much everything with the hog noses and just any health issues and anything like that, she has like the critical section, like any baby that might be close to. I call it critical because they're in critical condition.
Yeah.
Like some of them hatch out so small, some of them refuse to eat. She just has a magic touch and makes it so that like they just come back to life. And she's done it with so many and takes care of just so many special needs hog noses just because she wants them to have good lives. It's like she like looked at her, and I didn't even notice it, but at her tail was, and it's gross to say, but like a hummus like substance. And it found out that pretty immediately based on the smell that she was in septic shock.
Yeah.
And we
Yep.
were like, I was like, man, this is like awful. And I mean, she could tell you, I just sat there going like, what did I do to you? Because like I'm sitting there like, man, if I didn't breed you, if I didn't do this, like if I didn't, because it's like one of our friggin' kids. It
Yeah,
hurts.
man. That's the thing about
Sorry.
no, man. That's the thing with the breeding process. It's like you do it or you don't. And I actually lost a female this past year from egg binding as well. And and it was, I helped her push out some eggs and stuff like that, and same situation. Bacterial infection in the oviducts and stuff like that. And it's just one of those things like, man, if I wouldn't have bred her, but then she produced some of the best albinos, and like some cool reverse stripe pattern stuff like that, that I kept. And that when we produced stuff from her, always sold real fast. But it's part of, it's unfortunately it is part of it. I've heard people say, if you're breeding successfully every year, you're going to lose about 10% of your breeders, or your and stuff like that, which for us, if we have 100 animals, that's a lot, right? Like,
I've never heard that, but it,
yeah,
it feels like it holds true, man. Like last year, I almost lost one of my lemon ghost court gaverthline females because she had egg binding,
yeah.
and she dropped 2 disgusting looking eggs
Mm-hmm.
and then 2 good ones. And I kept the good ones and
Mm-hmm.
incubated them. And Avery kept the 2 disgusting ones and was like, I believe. No, she was like, I believe. Well, like what I'm talking. Like you've seen a disgusting
Yeah,
hog
yeah,
egg.
yeah.
One where you're like, no.
Does not
She
happen.
kept
Yeah.
them. No, she kept them. And uh, 60 something days later, out popped Dylan Pickle. And
That's wild.
I was like, man, there's no like green, like already going, like
Yeah.
part of the egg dying. And I'm like, man, there's no freaking way. I'm like, never get like these didn't look like what a dud looks like. Didn't look like that.
Mm-hmm.
Looked like semi compromised hognose eggs. Like
Mm-hmm.
what's going on here? Just like if this happens, it happens. And she would candle them and there'd be veins and she'd candle them and it looked, and then eventually just Dylan Pickle popped out. And I've never been so shocked where I'm like, I cannot believe that happened.
Yeah.
The only other time it happened was a hog nose egg. I'm not even joking with you. The size of my pinky right there. Um, went full term, hatched the smallest little runt of a hog nose you've ever seen. Half the diameter of a number 2 pencil, if not smaller than that.
Mm-hmm.
And we really like hatched fully, like looked like she or he was coming out, and unfortunately didn't make it to the next day. But the fact that it went fully all the way until like being able to hatch out of the egg and doing so and being alive, and then to not make it is like, that's also like another part of it that I don't think gets kind of like told,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like you said that 10% of like the breeders thing, where it's like I had I mentioned it before, those 2 super arctic conda triple het lav toffee albinos that just passed away in their bins the next day.
Yeah.
Is like no one tells you that randomly. Like you expect it, but it's it's so unexpected. You
Yeah.
know it's going to happen, but it happens when you're not like, you're like, oh, I've got this. No, you don't. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing is like, I've always thought of myself as like a decently emotionally strong person, but like not like nothing kind of prepares you for just looking at like the being that you're responsible for taking care of, and like they can't communicate with us, but
Yeah.
we're like, what did we do wrong? And
Yep.
sometimes with biopsies and stuff like that, you can get certain answers, and like when you do postmortem stuff, you can
Mm-hmm.
get scientific answers,
Mm-hmm.
but you never know where, if you're like, what if I didn't do this at this, like I'm a second guesser a lot. And like with feeding animals, I'm like, is this too big? Like, is this feeder too small? Like, and Avery's actually, she's helping me through that a lot, because like I second guess my feeder sizes all the time now after I had one female. A couple of years ago, she was my favorite snake I ever had. She was a sunburst 66 heady xanthic female from Jeff, and favorite snake I've ever had, like soul snake. Like I'd come in the room and she'd come out of her hide and follow me around and look at me, and I'd put my hand in her enclosure and she'd like slither onto it. And I fed her, so she was like a fifth. I think I weighed her. She was like a 58-gram snake or a 68-gram snake, and I fed her 2 fuzzies, which is pretty easy for
Mm-hmm.
that size of a snake. And the next day, I was like, oh, she's acting funky. And then I find her in the corner of her enclosure, just like sleeping in a weird spot. But I turn the lights off after doing my checks and stuff and being like, well, she'll be okay. Like she's just sleeping weird. And then the next morning, right before work, a half hour before, I go in, turn the lights on, 6:30, and I look and she's still there. And I'm like, oh, why are you still sleeping in the same spot? And there she was, lifeless. And I just bawl my eyes out for a half hour before I have to travel 2 hours to Cape Cod to, or somewhere in the area to go do construction work. And it's like so much of this, people like the spontaneity of like just random deaths and
Mm-hmm.
just when you're not expecting it with the healthiest of animals. And ever since that time that I did that and fed her those 2 fuzzies, I'm like super reluctant to feed like even like appropriate size feeders where it's like I Avery will look at me and I have her stand with, and it sounds sad to admit, but it's like I have her stand with me and be like, is this appropriate for the snake? Because she knows what can eat what. And for me, it's like, man, I am acknowledging that like I kind of do have like a slight mental issue because of that. And even Jeff at the time was like, no, more than likely it was like a congenital issue or potential cancer or something like that because a female of her size, she looked completely healthy, all of
She
those
should
things.
be able to, yeah, take down those
Yeah.
2 fuzzies.
Oh,
Yeah.
she didn't even leave a dent in her stomach.
Mm-hmm.
She was, but something went wrong. And still to this day, I'm like affected by it.
Yeah.
And stuff like that is like, no one told me that that was going to happen. But like, in a way, it's like, I still have trouble because I look at these things as like my babies. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, if I was the one who caused that, I could never do that to another animal again. But then in some instances, it feels like, all right, well, I feed them all of these smaller meals. Who's it negatively affecting now? Myself, because now I have to buy so much more
Yeah.
of a certain feeder size.
Yeah.
Just so, and I've noticed myself doing that where it's like I'll order small pinks for a group of babies that needs larges because I'm like, well, this, like in my head, I'm like, this won't affect them. Like this won't like cause an issue. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not really the way to be going about feeding stuff, but it affected me in that way. And now Avery's like pretty much going and telling me like, no, like she's rewiring my brain to be like, no, like we're getting
Yeah.
back to feeding them right.
Yeah. And you know what? And that's a good point you bring because like we talk about, you know, and within the breeding community and stuff like that, we talk about people power feeding their animals and stuff, right? Try to get them as big as possible, quick as possible. Um, and I think that's something that maybe doesn't get brought up sometimes, especially with hognose, where they're not big snakes at all. So
No.
if you're trying to like power feed, double feed these animals, you can easily cause regurgitation. And then if you don't wait after regurgitation and it happens again and stuff like that, it can hurt the animal for life, where it's gonna have troubles eating all the time. Um, and I think feeding smaller sometimes it is better. Smaller, more frequent, it is better. Um, but then like I tell people, my adult males, I max out at hoppers.
Same.
And my adult females, I usually feed small or medium adult mice, and the mediums are for like the bigger girls that are like 300 grams. But anything
See,
under
like
300 grams, I do small.
I'm not even there. I only
Yeah.
feed most small mice.
Hmm.
But the thing is, like, my brain is weird because I can feed 2 or 3 small mice to an adult
Mm,
female, no problem. But if I like mentally, if I'm like, oh, some people feed their adult females larges, and I know I have a
that's
female that could eat it. Yeah, it's like
yeah.
I know I have a female that could eat one of those, but it's like to me, it's like, man, like it mentally compromises me. I'm like, I can't do that because the potential for them to like have an issue eating that. I'm like, I'd rather just feed them 3 small mice.
Hmm.
And it, like I said, it does cost me a lot more,
Cost
but
for sure. Yeah.
a lot more. But it's like it definitely helps me at least have a little bit peace of mind where I'm like, I haven't had an issue like that ever again, which in a way is kind of negatively reinforcing me going like the strictly smaller rocks. It's like, oh, well, if I've done that and I haven't had any issue anymore, then it's okay. But it's
Mm-hmm.
like, but then you have those people, like you said, that are power feeding that are like, well, why isn't this already this big? And it's like, I think, and I can't completely quote Jeff on it, but he says like in the wild, some of the mature adult females will be like 7+ years old, and they'll just be getting to that like 160, 180, 200
Mm-hmm.
gram range. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, and those are like the ones that survived and are like strong and thriving. And it's like, I've seen posts, and I can't name anyone specific, but it's overseas folks I see a lot where they're like, this one was hatched at this specific date and now it's 300 grams. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Wow.
that's 16 months. I'm like, what are you feeding it every
Mm-hmm.
day? And I'm like, how could that be good for the snake? So like mentally, I'd rather the snake get, I can't put a certain number on it. I don't actually know the amount, but let's say I'd rather a snake get 2 more years of life from it being fed, not a metabolism thrashing diet, versus me pounding an animal, getting 30 extra eggs out of it based on its life.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then, hope, like, because I hope all of my females and my breeders live 15+ years. Like, I hope so. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that, without a doubt,
Yeah.
would make me like the happiest person on earth. But, like you said, I 10%, but I didn't realize that, but it kind of makes sense now. It really does, because random stuff just pops up, and yeah, wow, that's
And that's,
crazy.
and I, when I talk about my sponsors in the beginning, one of the biggest things I think I've had this last 2 years was adding quails to the diet
I was going
consistently.
to ask you.
Man, it makes a difference. It really has. And big shout out to Blake, because he, after talking to him, and luckily he's a 30-40 minute drive from me. After talking to him and a couple other friends and stuff, um, he started now using button quails for the smaller species. So even like my holdbacks that are above like 20-30 grams, I can feed quail to, because he has like day old hatch button quails. They're small enough for that. And my females, that's one thing I did this year. Um, I'm feeding every other meal a quail and then mice. And so far, we'll see. All the proof is when the eggs come, right? Like if the egg laying happens well, if it's good eggs, we'll see the calcification on the eggs. But I do see females gained weight, but not any like pudginess and stuff like that. And I've been feeding pretty, every couple, 4 to 5 days with the females. Pull a male, feed smaller meals, and then also he started the regular the Contornix quail. He did an extra small size specifically for adult female hognose, because he had day old and they were very small. They were like about hopper size, and
Okay.
and then he jumped up to bigger, like large mice size. So he did it in between just for smaller species, like adult females, and it's been great so far. No, and then another thing too, right? It's again the quality of feeders that we have. I think that's been a big topic recently in the last year within the reptile community.
Bet.
Same thing with the quails. He grows them directly on his ranch, and I pick them up directly from there, or he ships them directly to your door. And I haven't seen like people say, oh, if you feed bird or quail or something like that, you're gonna see very runny, messy poop. Not at all from
I
his
was
stuff.
going to ask you. I was going to be like, how are poops? Not to be the
Not at
weirdo,
all.
but nothing.
No, but this, that's funny because like
That's hard. That's what we do.
that's what we do, right? Like these little small details make a big difference in our keeping. And
Oh, smell, especially like
yep, yep,
certain stuff,
yeah,
like
yeah.
100%.
So
Like,
no running, just normal poops and stuff like that. Once in a while you get a feather here and there, but that's normal. You get fur from feeding mice as well.
Yeah.
But they love it. Majority of my snakes take it. I think I have maybe 2 adult females that are just hooked on mice for their whole life, so they just won't, they'll hiss and strike at it and won't eat it. But as soon as like I put a mouse in front of their face, right after they'll take that. And I think I have like 2 or 3 males as well. But anything that I hatched here, or that I got, that I got and started them on quail earlier, has has no problem with switching back and forth and feeding and stuff.
Well, that's good to know. Maybe I'll
Mhm.
actually get some of that just to try it out
Yeah,
because
man. Yeah, and then like with I think their body structure too, with their not being, having a lower fat percentage, it's great too. We always talk about a lot of animals I've seen pass, or I've talked, heard through the grapevine and talked to people, is like either fatty livers and large hearts and that stuff. And it's because they're not used to, their bodies aren't meant to just feed on fatty mice for 15, 20 years of their life, right? So I think we
consistently
are.
at the same time every single week. It's
Hmm.
like that's one thing that I kind of throw in and off sometimes. Is like so with like my adults and my breeders, I kind of like and it's not like any special method I'm trying to say that I do, but I do like more of like a mental like uh naturalistic feeding for them where
Hmm.
sometimes I will give them like more food one time and then the next
Yeah.
time I'll go like 10 days and I'll give them one feeder and then the
Yeah.
next time I'll go 14 days and I'll give them one feeder and then
Hmm.
I'll go another amount and then give them another, but it's like giving them that variance where it's not like all the same on their system, giving their
Yep.
system a break sometimes where it's like I know certain females, like everyone's like, oh, get them to this size, get them to this size. This is the ideal size. This is that. My best females are like 180 to
Yeah.
200 grams. It's
There's
like,
no such thing as an ideal size, man. There's
yeah,
nothing that fits in one square when we're doing all this stuff with animals. It's finding what fits for that specific animal and what fits for your, was it a breeding process or your system. Another thing too that I do is when I feed the small mice, sometimes I'll also give them an incubated quail egg as well. So it has a small little, incubated quail in it, and they love it as well. And same thing, no issues with this. Like they eat it whole, no issues with the shell. So it's again variance of nutrition
like
and
Victor
feeding.
mentioned, yeah,
Hmm.
it's probably good for their system too.
Hmm. Yeah, man.
That's one thing I wish I could afford um, to vary it more because you mentioned it, feeder quality.
Hmm.
I'm not going to name anything, but I've noticed in my feeders a very big discrepancy in the
Hmm.
size of the feeder in every single bag.
Hmm.
And it's like I order small feed, like I'll order small pinks, right? There'll be smalls and larges in there. It's
Hmm.
like if I'm ordering a small pink, I want it to be
Yeah.
small. And you giving the pinks a day or two difference is it's quite a large difference in size. So when I get the bag of larges, there's smalls in there, small pinks, larges, and fuzzies. So it's like, okay, I did not order the mixed variety. And then the fuzzy bag, there's fuzzies and hoppers, and so on and so on. There'll be hoppers in the fuzzy bag, but then you go up to the small mice, and then you got hoppers in there. So it's like price wise, it's like if I order say 10 bags of each, I'm really getting like 7.5, like 12 and a half, like 15 and a half. And it's like, that's great and all, but it kind of makes you lack the confidence to make a bulk order now because it's so inconsistent and it's like so lacking. And
Yeah.
seeing how many of these companies just like seem to throw them in there and just like hope that it's okay. It's like, I'm sorry, but no, it's not. Like we
Hmm.
do work with a smaller species. Not one like there's significantly smaller species that need to get
Yeah.
started on bugs and stuff like that, but we do work with the smaller species. And sometimes they could like that's the one thing discrepancy a lot of people like that I don't like the 10 meal thing where it's like, oh, it's had 10 meals. It's like I've had 10 or have had some that have had 10 meals that have been on just like small pinks and are still on small pinks. And it's
Hmm.
like, I want my snakes, and I'm sorry to customers, but I want them trying to bite you. And it's like, it it's very rare where I have anyone come to me saying that they're like snake went off food. But around the time of the year, you know how it goes. At
Yeah.
Florida might be a little bit different, but here in Rhode Island, it got down to like single digit like weather, and now we're finally having like 40s, 50s, and 60s again, which is like I'm in shorts. I'm like having the time of my life. Whereas like in Florida, if you're like in 40s, 50s, and 60s, you
Yeah,
guys are
right.
thinking like
You're bundled up, man. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas like us New Englanders, we're like, I feel like it's intrinsic for us to just like wear a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, even if
Yeah.
it's like not nice out. It's just built in. But
Yeah.
it's like with that, animals do tend to go off feed. Unfortunately for myself, this room that I'm in, I superheat. So it is 82 degrees in here, which is why I'm drinking so much water. It's like I'm trying to stay hydrated and not like completely have a dry mouth. But it's like I have all of their temperatures at like 96 to 100 for their hot
Mm-hmm.
side, but it's 82 in here. And I have these lights right here. I don't know if you can see them at all, but they're called Cree lights. So
Mm-hmm.
Cree lighting. And those right there, I can control with my
Yeah.
phone. And those are on a set schedule to give them at least 14 and a half hours of 65K sunlight. And that's one thing a lot of people don't talk about with
Yeah.
their snakes is lighting. If you have your snake by a window and it sees it's only getting 8, 10 hours of light a day, that snake's going to think something's up. That's not an ideal season to be out and about eating,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's proper temperature parameters. And I've noticed this because none of them ever go off food, ever, like ever. And part of it worries me because I'm like, if I give them perpetual summer and all of the time, like, is
Mm-hmm.
that bad? Then on the other end, I'm like, at nighttime, it might dive down to 75 in here, which kind of stimulates nighttime, but it's not necessarily as cold. But I'm like, in Texas, it probably stays pretty hot. I don't know exactly how, but
Yeah.
it's like that ignorant mentality, like, oh, it's probably in those parameters. But it's like they all have hides and stuff to go about and do as such. But I really do think sunlight plays like a really pivotal factor into keeping them eating.
It does, man. It does. And I have had maybe one or two customers come back to me that I know of have come back to me. It's like, hey man, the snake was eating fine 2 3 times and it just quit on me. Stop eating for me and stuff like that. And majority of the time it's been light cycle. Same thing like you said. My lights here are probably going to turn off here in a few minutes. But they're on the timer and they're getting 14 16 hour days. So
You just reminded me I didn't want them to turn off on me. Oh,
so
all right.
my stuff, my babies that are up for sale, they never get brumated. They stay on the same light cycle all year round or however long they're here, on heat. And man, once for the 2 years I've had babies and I've been feeding, once they become a steady feeder, I haven't had any issues unless sheds or something like that they get off food. So that's very like that's one thing I started noticing when they move on to a new customer, stuff for that, different lighting, and all that stuff. I think that's the biggest problem that we have and people don't research is the lighting cycles for specific these animals. Because I think that's another thing too. People are used to having most popular, reptile in, the pet trade is ball pythons, right? And these
Correct.
things are
For sure.
nocturnal animals, right? They don't need crazy light cycle. You can keep them in a gray tub for the whole life and they'll still eat for you. They'll still be fine. So that's not talked about as much, especially on social media or many of these like other larger podcasts and stuff like that, because they don't have the need for it, right? Where our animals diurnal, they need light. They need to figure out. They need to be able to see a cycle of light to be able to either, am I eating? Am I breeding? Am I brumating? What's going on in my life cycle right now? More than temperature. Yeah, they need the temperature, to digest and survive. But with the temperature, without light cycle, you're gonna run into that feeding problem. Um, you know,
I kind of just think of it. So like the lights are set to 9:30. I did have them at 8:30 for a little bit when
Mm-hmm.
they shut off, but now they're 9:30.
Mm-hmm.
And as lame and as silly, primitive as it sounds, how did human beings used to know that winter was coming? The days were getting shorter. We didn't have
Mm-hmm.
watches and stuff like that. How did we know that the new season was coming and winter was over? The days started getting longer.
Yep.
So in my head, I'm like, and it does seem so. They've been a lot more active now that I started turning the lights on or keeping them on for longer.
Yeah.
They already were good, but now some of them are freaking out, going like food hungry crazy with their
Yeah.
mouths on the bin. And I'm like, with the season, admittedly, it's 60 degrees out. I've got that window open, but it still says it's 82 in here with 30% humidity. Admittedly, it's like it's all coming up and they're going crazy again, but I'm starting my brumation period now. So all of these ones are getting crazy and starting to go like all insane,
Mm-hmm.
but most of them are going into brumation or are going to be like taking off food. So I'm curious to kind of see what that effect has on them, where it's like they think the new season's coming, but they're coming off of food and then going into brumation after that.
Yeah.
So if the light cycle itself, so like for you can't see it, but for brumation, I use wine coolers, which
Mm-hmm.
I mean perfectly acceptable. They've worked so far for me, and that it works best for year-round people. I'm sure in Miami and that kind of area, it's a little
Mm-hmm.
bit worse. It's probably a lot more humid and a lot more difficult to keep that whole what's it called, cool temperature,
Yeah.
just in general. But with blind over it, I still feel like they'll notice that like the temp, like the season that I've created is changing. So if my season goes poorly, it could potentially be because of what I just told you about me
Mm-hmm.
bringing that light out. So we'll see what happens. If not, then whatever I did didn't affect their brumation cycle.
Yeah.
But it's like stuff like that. Did I do that on purpose? No, but saying it out loud now kind of made me think about it. And I was like, oh, that's probably a bad decision. But, it's just in
Yeah.
a habit of being like, oh, this is what I should do this time of year. Been a
So
little frazzled lately.
no, but so we're talking. We brought up the topic of brumation. And people have asked, when should I brumate? Well, when it's the perfect time to brumate, is there a certain time? A lot of people brumate a lot earlier. Like I have females going in prelay ship because I brumated, started last year, bringing them out the beginning of the year. So what's your process and why brumate now?
Why do I do what I do?
Yeah.
So it's going to sound silly, but my first season got very delayed.
Hmm.
And so when I first like got around to finally doing everything, I started like halfway through the season. And for whatever reason, that completely failed, by the way. That first season, nothing happened, no eggs and stuff like that. So then all of my females that I had that were approaching the correct age were born in like May and June. And I was like, oh, crap. Uh, this is so far behind everyone else's season. So I'm like, do I wait or do I just go for it? And in the middle of like 80-degree June here, because our weather does get super, super hot sometimes. We've
Yeah.
had 100-degree days for whatever reason. Heat, like Rhode Island's an interesting place. We're like Massachusetts Junior, but like the second Boston. But for whatever reason, I decided like, all right, I'm gonna just still go through with it. Still like not wait until the season, which was to like I could have waited, brumated 4 or 5 months later, been in the season with everyone else. But I was like, all right, let's see what happens when I do it now. So I did that with one pairing, and then I told myself I was gonna offset all of my pairings by like every couple months with 2 or 3 females, hoping everything went well. And it didn't. And only specific females that locked at specific times did certain things. So then I just happened to brumate again. And it just so happens that when I did it, it lined up with just a terrible time for other like Hognose. Because so many people have told me, they're like, well, if you do your pairings now, then you're going to be on the market so much later than everyone else with your pairings and stuff. And I'm like, That's what you think? I have stuff, the Arctic triplet laugh toffee sable stuff, I haven't even listed on Morph Market, and that's been out for like 8 months. Why? Because I like sitting there and going, wow, these are cool project animals. Here you go. Here's your food. Like certain stuff is like, I don't know. I don't prioritize necessarily,
Yeah.
pumping that stuff out. So it's like with my schedule for brumation, I'm like, as long as the animal. So for example, Athena, I told you the super Arctic albino superconda, she dudded out, but I still didn't put her back into brumation. I didn't do anything like that. I haven't paired her again. I waited a year. I pretty much emulated the fact that like, oh, she needed her recovery year. And so I could have paired or put her back down for brumation. She looks very healthy. She's 230-ish. Looks fantastic. Could have put her back down, but I just didn't want to. And that's one thing that I feel like a lot of people don't understand with brumation is that you can do it at literally any time all year round. You just need to be able to give them the proper parameters. Like I don't like I understand that there's a season, but I don't like it being like a limiting factor to people thinking, oh, well, it's out of season, so now I can't breed my hog noses. It's like, no, take them off food, give them a little bit of time to cool down, give them at least take them off food, give them, 18, 20-ish days,
Mm-hmm.
take them off their heat, make sure that they're all cleared out so that nothing goes bad. They don't have any food in their system when they're in brumation, and throw them into brumation. It's like, I was very hesitant at first to do my pairings, and you're going to be like, well, I'll do that then. And then you're going to be like, dang, I waited 6 months. And if I did that, I'd be holding baby hog noses now. And
Yeah.
it's like, but it wasn't in season. It's like, no, it doesn't matter if it's not in season. Just like do what you want to do with the project. And once the baby hog noses hatch out, then they're ready. It's like, I feel like putting yourself into that column and telling yourself you have to do it during the season is like, it made me feel stressed out because then it made it feel like a competition with other people. And I know it, like some people see it as that. Like, I don't mean to trash on world's firsters, but people who are like, I made the world's first of this, and that. I'm like, that's incredible. I love that. But it's the animals doing it. You did the project and the mindset of it. And it's super incredible that that happened. But I'm more of the proponent where like the animals speak for themselves, like the super snow stuff. I have zero time, effort, or energy put into the originality of those projects. And it's like, I love them, but I would never take responsibility. Like, I think they're super, super incredible, but I would never be like, yeah, my super snow stuff. Like, I don't like having an ego about animals that are like born and bred and like just live and survive.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, to me, they're living art. And I want people to be like, oh, that's an incredible animal. I really appreciate it. And I'm like, it is an incredible animal. Appreciate it. I just so happen to be the lucky person to put those two snake parents together and they popped that out. I'm just as like, oh my God, that's a cool animal as like you. Whereas like I go to your page and I'm like, man, like I think it's the male, the Arctic Sable holdback you have.
Yeah.
It's related to my girl. I look
Mm-hmm.
at him and I'm like, I just like looking at cool snakes
Yeah.
with cool genetics. It
Yep.
shouldn't be about like, here's my WWE belt. I did
Yeah.
this. It's like, congratulations, awesome. But like, the animals did that, and you were just so happened to be the lucky person who, like, again, there's a lot of people who put a lot of work into projects, and I'm not saying that that work shouldn't be like championed because it should be. Like spending years of your life getting there and making world's first is like incredible, but making the personality of it is like, dang, is like you should just be like, this is incredible, welcome it to the like the world, not like this is incredible, I'm incredible. Incredible. It's like, all right, like, but
No, and I get that. Like the self like perpetuation of like what you did with the animals. And I'm like, man, it's funny because like to me, and I say to myself, I'm still new.
oh,
Even I'm still
oh yeah,
new.
who knew?
So like even when I produce some animals, I was like, this is cool. This is really cool. You know, and I just share them. I never like think of like, damn, I produced the best albino or I produced the best this and that. I think they're just cool and I'm share them because they're to me, I enjoy seeing them. And hopefully somebody else when they see it's like, okay, that's cool, and it makes them enjoy it, and it makes them feel good to see a cool looking animal, something
That's why I
that's
use exclamation points a lot, because
mhm,
sometimes I feel like a lot, like I get really excited, and sometimes the way that like I write things and stuff like that probably comes off like a little I don't know, like cut and dry and stuff like that. Because I'm like, oh, this, and that, this, and that, and I have jumbled thoughts, and I like constantly am bouncing around. So I use like exclamation points because I want people to be like, you're either crazy or you're like really excited about this. And I'm like, I am really excited about
yeah,
this. It's like, I love this stuff. It's like, you could tell me, like, I ask my customers all the time, like I post and I'm like, hey, can you people reach out to me? Like I even reach out to people because I want to hear about the animals.
yep,
Because like as weird as it sounds, it's like in my head, I'm like, that's still my baby. It's like
yeah,
I just like knowing because I bless my luck, but I've gotten so lucky with my customers and so many of the people that are just incredible who like reach out and are like, look at how well they're doing. And I'm like, dude, that's what it's all about.
yeah.
I'm
You know
like,
what's the thing about that though? I think you put the energy out that makes them feel welcomed, and okay for them to reach back out to you, and you've built that relationship with them, so they're coming back to you. And every single time I sell the animal, hey, send me updates, I'm more than welcome, don't think you're bothering me, stuff like that. It's cool to see what I've hatched out, to see where it's at years from now, 6 months from now, whichever it is. Just I think this week or last week, it was last week because it's only Tuesday. So last week, I had a customer reach back out to me on Morph Market, and I can't remember the exact animal I got from them. They got from me, but they're like, hey, just giving you a quick update. She's doing great. This and that. Is it okay if I tag you and I mention you on my social media? And I also
of
do
course.
live feeds, like not feedings but lives
Yeah.
on YouTube, just all day streams of my hog nose enclosure, and they have some cool like bioactive setups. I'm like, yeah, of
I've
course.
I've thought of that. So what you're saying is that they just have a live feed on their enclosures.
Yep.
I've thought, why hasn't someone done that?
Yeah.
But I've also at the same time been like, man, that's like a long time to
Yeah.
just have a
Yeah.
camera going and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You
So
walk in,
they
eat some
did that.
cereal.
Yeah, so they did that, and I was like, "That's cool," And I'll pop in once in a while and see what there is, And it's funny because like I have my own snakes I could just come and look at,
Oh yeah.
But it's cool to go see, and because she has an animal from Eslin actually, and then one animal from me, and the one I think she has the live feed currently going on is the one from Eslin, and then now she's going to start one on the animal she got from me. I think she got it like a year later. So it's cool to just go, and I'll subscribe to the channel, and I'll get like a
Yeah, but now you can
notification.
check in whenever you want. Yeah,
Exactly.
that's so cool.
So it's really cool. And I was
You'll
like, yeah,
have to
of
send me the
course.
info.
Yeah, I'll send it to her. I'll share it on my Instagram once she posts it and stuff like that. So it's cool to see like people taking that extra step to show their love for their animals and the animals that you've hatched out and put some work into. So over the years, I think once I think now the next culmination is like I have one or two males that I'm breeding, that I hatched out here this year. One's an Arctic coral, and actually only one male, an Arctic coral male. But then and that's pretty cool. And it's actually my daughter's using it for her lavender project. Um,
Okay. All right. Which of
and
course it's
yeah,
no longer yours.
yeah, so and
But
what a first
getting the kids
year.
involved is, I agree with it entirely.
Yeah, in the first
100%.
year to use an Arctic coral male to produce, more lavender stuff, you know, but it's gonna be cool when I see people like yourself, other breeders that I've sold hognose to, be able to produce animals from stuff that I've produced.
I
Um,
was gonna say that I had a customer message me, the one I was mentioning to you, who
mhm,
had the only super Arctic triplet male.
mhm,
She messaged me a couple pairings she was doing, and they were just like, I'm sitting here like, dang, like I can't believe it. I like it's finally happened. like people are making animals with the animals that I've made animals with.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't believe it. I was like, this is incredible. And then the pairings too, where it's like you're sitting there and you're like, why didn't I think of that? And I'm like, you're kind of like, wow, like that's actually going to be like such a good pairing. And you're just like sitting there like, and then a little teardrop goes down your eye because you're just like, finally, it's like that optimism, that like original optimism where you're like, morph market calculator in this tab, 74 tabs open. All right, this would do this with this, and that. You're like, it comes back to you, and you're doing it with your customers' animals now, with the animals that you've made. And it's like, you think about it, and it's just like the most incredible feeling because you're like, not only did they choose to get an animal from you, and they're like, that's the one I want to go with this project. It's also like, I don't know, it just kind of feels like a weird honor where someone
Mm-hmm.
just like puts that trust in you to like be like, all right, I trust that your animals will further this and like give me that same excitement that you got when you made them. And it's like, if I can give that to someone, I'm all about it. And you said like your daughter's project. Like when I was 18, I think 19 was the first time I ever had pets. I didn't really get to have pets as a child.
Yeah.
Um, and then moved out at 20, and at 23 got snakes and never looked back. I'm going to be 28 this year. So it's like went from having no pets to just have like none throughout my childhood until like literally I'm not joking, got 2 puppies when I was 19, but I moved out a year later, and now I have 100 plus at any time. And it's like, and then Avery has every species under the sun. I mostly take care of the hognose.
Mm-hmm.
She has her own hognose collection, which is, she's getting some pretty good stuff. Can't even lie. She wasn't all about the hognoses at first, but
Yeah.
then like some stuff, I'm like, well, they smudge. I'm like, how dare you like get such a beautiful animal? I was like, don't try to sneak in your projects. But
That's
one of the things is like I'm team Sable, she's team Swiss. And it's like I believe Swiss are incredible. They're super amazing. I love them. They're awesome. But I'm gonna die in a fiery battle on that hill of sable loving. Because
oh.
like look at the super arctic sables, the green sables, the black sables, the red sables. It's
Mm-hmm.
like Swiss have gold Swiss and black Swiss. They're they've they're pretty crazy. They're pretty awesome. The colors
Yeah.
that pop out of them are pretty awesome. The Sable has translucency and super cool colors and has those pink cheeks and adds a lot of that crazy scale coloration. So Team Sable. But like storm clouds, I love storm clouds. I'm sorry, but like I'll die on a hill with sables where it's like sable and storms. I really like, but those axanthic Swiss are like some of the craziest looking things that pop out. But I like the blue tones. So it's like, yes, yep, VX and sables have a whole round. Yep, spectrum is sexy.
Yeah. No, and you
But
know what? And that's another cool thing to see, like the variance of two very similar genetics, but the differences as well, hyper melanistic stuff. And that's another thing too, like having those, and this is crazy. Imagine not having Sable or Swiss in Hognose currently. That would I don't know, you know, it would be wild to not, we wouldn't have like, anything that I think right now is relevant and people are really chasing after wouldn't be here without the Sables and the Swiss right now.
well, I'm trying to think of, so entertain this question. What do you think would be more popular if Swiss came first, or how it happened if Sable came first in
I think either.
popularity?
I think either. It is just we've had more, what's the thing with, I think, with the popularity of Swiss and Sables. Swiss has the elusiveness yet because of how rare it is, because of how long, they kept it under wraps and how much stuff they did before more people got their hands on it. I think we would, if they became around the same thing as Sable, if it came around the same time, I think it'll be very uneven. I think even because there's different, the Swiss Azantics are totally different from the Swiss Sables. I mean the Sable Azantics, right?
Yeah.
Totally different projects.
comes to mind immediately is the Mai Tai versus the Swiss
Mm-hmm.
Tangerines.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the toffee Swiss. They look kind of more sunburst style.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, well, with some of them, I know that he's working with different kind of phases because I've
Yeah.
seen some darker ones and some more bright ones. Then you
Mm-hmm.
got Mai Tais, which are same toffee belly,
Mm-hmm.
but like we said, look like they have that rusted color.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I'm still Team Sable. I'm sorry. Like I I admittedly haven't seen every single Swiss morph that there is
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
there's probably a lot that are still in production. I know Jules has been working on a few secret ones
Mm-hmm.
for a little while and stuff like that he posts every so often. But I still will never get over just like the way that Sable is able to translate itself across like line bred, like purple line stuff and
Mm-hmm.
red line, where on some of Jeff's Arctic sables, yes, Arctic sables, they have like red flecking on the sides that I remember when I was looking at them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like those super enhanced ones are crazy to me. Where like I've seen super dark sables. I had one for a while. She looked crazy looking, and she was just a plain sable. And the variety of them and the ability for them to be like a chocolate brown or like a red or even like a high green one and stuff like that, while all still being in the sable, I prefer. I still prefer, but it's making me think now to the point where it's like, what if those lines were worked in Swiss chocolate? And is it just
Correct.
because of the fact that it's
Yeah.
not been worked with yet?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm still Team Sable. It's Tuesday, March 11th, 2025, but we'll check back in 5 years and see what I
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. So, and talk about those line bred traits and those, specific traits to be that we've bred into Sable and stuff already over the years. Um, that's one of the biggest pairings I had this year was Swiss male to extreme red purple line superconda albino. So
So you know the
official
days are
lock,
coming. Wow.
happened last week. I gave a little teaser on my Instagram post, but I'm now working that extreme red lineage into there. I want to see what's gonna happen, right?
So I'm gonna have to start sending you more texts.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
that means.
yeah, yeah,
I'm looking forward to that. No, because I really do want to see what like so I call it like by kind of like window shopping, like
hmm
where it's like I don't have the means to work on that project, but I like I said, the world's first people probably don't have
hmm
the same opinion as me because they're probably wanting to make that one first.
hmm
Where I'm like, I'm looking out at other people going like, man, I really hope someone makes this. Like with bringing them up again, Jeff's Lav Toffee or Moonstone line ended up
hmm
popping out some Lav Toffee stuff.
hmm
And for everyone else who would be like a world's firster mentally, like they would be like, crap, he's gonna beat me to it. And I'm sitting here like, no, I want like I talk about Lav Toffee so much. I'm just like, no, take this, take this, take this. Please take this. Work on this project. Look at how amazing it is. Why? Because I want people to make this because then they'll see how amazing it like that's how I feel like every morph starts is like you just got to yap about it too much until people actually start working on it.
Yeah.
And it's
Yep.
like with the Lav Toffee stuff, say for example you have what's it called, you or Esna has the Lav Toffee male and he could breed it to the super arctic conda triple het that he's got from me,
hmm
and say he hits it first, I'm not going to go down in shambles and cry. I'm going to ask him to send me a million pictures of it because I want to see it.
That's
It's
right.
like
Yeah.
I care about the animals existing in this plane of existence. I
hmm
don't care if it's with me. I hope to one day make one like that, like stuff like that amongst every project. But
Yeah.
that's what I hope for everyone in their projects. It shouldn't be like a competition to the top. It's like for a lot of us, this is a hobby and we'll maintain a hobby and be that style, but it shouldn't feel cutthroat. It shouldn't feel like tension. It should just feel like you are having fun producing animals that you hope to make. It's like
Yeah.
it shouldn't be more complicated than that. And I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of people see it as like a competition. And for some people it is, but for the majority, we kind of have to just want to work together and make cool stuff. And a lot of people in the hobby, I will admit, in the last few years have gotten like really, really cool. Like they've gotten to the point where it feels like people really want to just actually care about the animals
Yeah.
and like
I
work
think
on projects.
with that, man, I think it's just the evolution of who's
But
coming into the hobby.
I do want to say, not to sound like I'm super experienced, that I am still newer. I'm saying like within the recent times, within the
Yeah.
past 5 years.
Yeah. I think it's just in those 5 years have made such a big difference in all reptiles. I think with just a different type of um what would I say, demographics and stuff like that have come into the reptile world, um, you know, it's made a big difference where how people are seeing different projects, first of all, how people are taking care of, all doing all the naturalistic stuff, the bioactive.
Which is super
Um,
cool.
it's
I,
so cool, man.
I wish I
If
had the mentality to do it. Avery does that.
it's things like right
She
to where
knows
the point,
exactly what to do.
yeah, yeah, and then to the point where like to be able to put bioactive in the amount of hognose we have or whatever reptiles we have, it's going to just be super super expensive. And I'm not saying these animals we shouldn't spend the most money on them, but at the same time is it's got to be realistic on how much money we're going to spend and what's going to be able to affordable for our customers too and people that want to buy animals. Because if I have to set up every single animal that I have in here in a naturalistic PVC or glass enclosure to sustain that, I would have to charge 3 4 times what the animals are worth now, right? And if
I at one point had 40 plus glass enclosures.
yeah,
It was
it
miserable.
was no, I could as well. Yeah,
And
yeah,
like, not discrediting anyone who does that. It's a lot of
hmm
work.
it is.
It's so much work.
Mm-hmm.
But 40 gallon for adult male, adult female, I've tried it. I've done it. I've done everything. I've wazooed up everything. I've given
Mm-hmm.
them all of the enrichment you can imagine. And not to sound like bad towards the people that do all that and say that they need the enrichment, but in my experience, anecdotally, they go from one corner to the other and they only use their enrichment in certain cases to climb over that to go to the other corner, in my experience. And it's like, I notice more out of my females when I give them less space. And it's like, it's not that I don't give them a ton of space. These are almost 40 quarts tubs. Like they got plenty of space to move around. But when I have a giant glass 40 gallon that I need to hand scrub with pretty much like, I don't know what they use if they had JB Weld in their poop, but for whatever reason on glass it sticks
Mm-hmm.
better or whatnot. And it's like it's fun and all, but it's so much more easy. And it's like I don't have 40 gallons to like move over. I can just grab a bin, clean it out, sanitize it, let it dry, move a female over, clean her bin, sanitize it, let it dry. And it's like it's much more efficient to do it that way. And like you said, the cost is like so much less.
Mm-hmm.
It's I would spend $200 for an enclosure to do it up nice,
Yeah.
just for them to either poop on it or
Yep.
not use it. And you give them a hide, some paper towel tubes, and a couple other stuff up to your discretion, and they seem to have more of a fulfilling life than when I would give them. It just my mind keeps going back to it. Was this like step up grotto stone thing where it was like a tube and you would go inside, crawl around, come out and stuff like that. If you're the snake, never once used it. Spent like $40 on it. I'm like, man, that thing was like
Yeah.
so nice looking and expensive. And all they would do is poop on the little like thing, and it just made me upset. So
No.
like
And you know what? And
hard.
that's the thing, like if I had one or two hog nose, I would do it. When my first hog nose I did. I have a naturalistic and stuff like that. Once I got racks, he went into the rack
I
system.
had to give up because I ran out of space for enclosures, but I had
Yeah.
more hog noses.
Yep. Yeah, man. And I think that's, more power to the people who do it and are able to keep that going. And what I tell people when I've heard the argument of, either side, it's just like if you have an animal that you've gotten, it mostly came from a breeder that uses rack systems. I don't. there probably maybe is, I'm not gonna say there isn't, but there probably maybe one person that's doing it in that style. But I
I've
can't
yet to
think of.
hear of anyone say that
Yeah,
they throw their babies into 10 gallons.
yeah. I've
I,
never.
I've yet to.
Hmm. Hmm.
Impossible. Like, I'm sorry, but say you have a clutch of 30, a 10 gallons, what, 12 inches long,
Yeah.
give or
Yep.
take. So you have a clutch of 30. So now you got to find what, like 30 plus cubic feet to fit all of those.
Yeah.
And some people's rooms don't have that. And now
Yep.
you have to be able to walk around. So that right there, which has some of my holdbacks and stuff, which are 6 quarts, so they're growing into them. That right there, if I wanted to put 20 or 10 gallons on there, it would fit maybe one sideways and then two, but
Hmm.
it wouldn't be clean. So where I have right there is 12 hog noses up there, plus the shelves wouldn't be able to be so close. So that right there would fit two in that same
Hmm.
space. And it's like realistically, they would be wasting that space just as much as I would be wasting that space by giving them that.
Yeah.
And for us, it just isn't logical when you've experienced having them in glass enclosures, having them in tubs, and then going, there's no difference in
Yep.
their behavior.
Yeah. Even, man, I tell people
But I'm
last
not
year,
against those enclosures.
not at
They're
all.
great for pet owners,
Yep.
100%. And for the
Yep.
people that really want to show off their animals, that's how I
Yeah.
was at first.
Yeah.
But then it just got to be too much. Hours of cleaning, 6+ hours.
Hmm.
It's like trying not to crack the glass, trying not to, leave anything that might be bad for the snake inside the enclosure because it
Hmm.
requires you to use different tools, stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Like, yeah, I'm a proponent for like somebody that's going to keep a pet, is going to keep, one or two hognose naturalistic setup. I'm actually, breed springtails and isopods, you know, and I have them when I vend, I have them on my table for people that are looking for that, just to have another option for people that are willing to do something like that. It's cool. It's just, first of all, it's not 100% sanitary to do it on a larger scale. um time
It's tough.
frame, yeah, time frame, money wise, all that stuff adds up to it,
And I was
so.
spending money when I was cleaning mine. I have like surgical, medical, hospital grade rags just to make sure it gets in there. Because glass really, for whatever reason, their poop chooses to stick more
Mhm,
to versus the tubs. I've noticed that the tubs will release it pretty immediately, but the glass it sticks. I
mhm.
wonder what that really is. Like it's gonna be a weird little research session, but I'm gonna try to figure that out.
Yeah, glass
Uh,
glass and like urate. That's got to be interesting to see what happens there.
do you have
This,
any Picassos?
what was that?
Do you have any Picassos? I call them Picassos because they just like to paint their.
I'm trying to see. I have one female that's like that. One female that
Do
is
you?
just on the side of the tub all the time, and that
I've noticed
it's,
my females, only females. I don't get males that do it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm interested. But the males musk me way more.
Mm,
I don't get musked as, oh, there they go. Unlucky.
there you go. But like last year, all last year, I did cocoa core and sand mix in my tubs, and I also, because I want to see it, it's there's just a big difference from switching from Aspen to that. Yeah, the hognose enjoyed it and stuff like that, but then here's the kicker: when I added the lay box in there, they preferred being in the lay box than the rest of the bin that had the same substrate,
The same cocoa.
the same cocoa. So I tell people, it's like, yeah, we have these bigger, tubs, but they rather be in there. And I leave them even after
They're more
breeding season.
secure.
Yeah, even after breeding season, I leave them there for the rest of the year. Once I put them in, they stay in there, and I just redo the cocoa and stuff like that. And 90% of the time, when I go feed or I'm watering and stuff like that, they're in there. I have to pull them out to feed them and stuff like that. So they like being secure. They're naturally made to be in burrows, to burrow down, secure themselves and stuff like that.
Well, I like to use the analogy of an empty room a lot with people. When they ask me, they're like, can I throw my steak in a 40 gallon? I'm like, you can. I was like, but imagine it like this. You are a human being. You get kidnapped because that's what we're doing. We're shipping them off to a new home. They get thrown in a box that's dark. They have no idea what's going on. They pop out. There's a new face. You get kidnapped. You get thrown into a huge warehouse with a bunch of new stuff. What might you do? Probably hide in a corner, somewhere that feels safe, like secure. You're not going to go step in the middle of the warehouse versus they throw you in a room, a 10 by 10 room where you're like, there's a bed, maybe a TV, some stuff that you recognize. But it's not a huge warehouse where you're like, what might be in that corner? What might be in that corner? Oh, I can see to the other side, but like, how far is it? It's like I use the same analogy where it's like, it might work out, they might do well, but in my experience, going slow and going up in the size, I got a customer ask me what size to upgrade from the bin that I currently have a snake in that I shipped to him. Well, we'll be shipping. Whole nother story with FedEx being weird this week on that one, but could be another story for another time. But that snake, they asked me, wow, what size bin? And I was like, I go down the list. I'm like, you could use a 6 quart, you could use a 13 quart, you could use a 5 gallon, you could use a 10 gallon. It's like, it's all up to kind of what you want to do. You could go even larger. It's like the snakes on large and about to go up to fuzzies. But in my opinion, consistently going up with the snake is better than just being like, well, this is what I've got now. But you can't, like put the people down that are like, well, this is what I've got now.
Yeah.
Some people really can only do so much and are limited. And it's like, in that respect, I have sympathy because I feel like with hognoses in a certain sense, like in some of the Facebook groups I see, people get attacked pretty quickly if they're like husbandry subpar. Even when they're asking like, what can I do to upgrade my husbandry? People are like, that's incorrect. And it's like, yes, that's what they're asking for. And it's like, not everyone, like some hognose morphs, can go for a pretty penny. But then there's people that just want to own a hognose that don't care about the morph, that just love hognoses. Like everyone asks me what my favorite morph is. I say Bub's Daddy, but what's the best morph? Normals. Is why? Because that's the species.
So it started, yeah.
It's like that by itself is like where it's at. And you can't put people down for only being able to get a normal. Oh, well, that, like if I ever heard someone be like, oh, one person did this to me at a show. I didn't have any super condas, but I had like Bub's Daddies on my table and like Sub-Zeros. He went, no super condas. And I'm like, man, like I like super condas. They're not my favorite, but like, what do you mean no super condas? I'm like, there's so many beautiful hognoses. I would never put someone's animals down or be like, oh my God, you don't have this. Like what, like talking down to them. So it's like, for me, I'd be like, man, if I had a table full of normals, I'd walk up to you and be like, wow, these are some awesome hognoses. I wouldn't be like, oh, you don't have this. And like, sure, if he came up to me and was like, no Swiss, I'd be like, dang, like that's some guy who like, all right, I guess I'm not good enough. But to
you
be
have
like
Swiss money, like
yeah, I'm like, dang, but I'm like, no super condas. I'm like, I get a super conda for like $300. I'm like, I was like, super condas are great. I have some, but I don't like making them. It's not my preference. I like we said, super Arctic blank conda. I like when they have the conda in there. It's just my thing. Super condas are super cool, but not my thing.
Yeah. And we had this viewer. I think a 40-gallon can be if it's a really good feed or if it's a bigger animal, but a 20 long would be preferably. I recommend once it gets to that adulthood. The tubs you have behind you. That's one of the biggest things I tell people is like when you start off, use the tubs.
This is my adult. These things are large. Like this is my arm.
Yeah.
Like it's not like a bad life. That right in there, that girl right there is 300 and something grams. Like, and she looks like adequate in there.
Yeah.
So
like, but even like the 6 quarts, when I sell a small baby, a yearling, I tell people, don't go ahead, you don't have to go spend your $100-$200 on a glass enclosure. This and that, like it's forever home.
It's cheaper to figure out first. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, go buy a $6 Starlight tub from Walmart. Buy, a heat pad, thermostat.
I feel like it's them not wanting to be judged because they just bought an animal and people are like, well, you threw it in a thing already. Be like, well, this is kind of how the person told me to go about it, and I
Mm-hmm.
trust them. That's another thing. It's like trusting the breeder. I see a lot of people who are like, is this a male? Is this like, respectfully, like, I understand that it's definitely questionable, but as a breeder, that break my heart if I saw one of my customers out on there being like, is this a male? Is this specific morph?
Yeah.
It's like, I pride myself in like knowing this stuff and like telling customers like, come to me, like I know. And like to feel like maybe that like bond was broken and that they don't trust you is like, that throws me off a little bit.
Yeah. And,
So
and I always tell people, it's like, you did shows last year too. We did a few shows last year, right? I always tell
yeah,
people, it's like when people come up to my table and ask me, "Hey, I got this animal." I was like, first of all, did you contact the breeder first? Oh no. I was like, I go, that's my first recommendation. So if you have any questions about the animal, contact the breeder. But here's my info in case you can't get a hold of them. If they don't want, they're not giving you the info, message me if they can't give you info. It's like, because they know more about that animal that I will. I can give you a general info,
yeah,
but
like what morph it might be, what
yeah,
sex it could be, but
yeah,
there's certain underlying stuff that you just
mm-hmm,
might not be able to help them with.
mm-hmm,
Like, for example, hatch date. What are you going to do there? Like,
yeah,
I've had people come up to me, and I don't want to be a jerk at all, but they're like, how old do you think my snake is? And then they show it to me, and it's like a certain size. And I'm like, that thing could be 10 years old and just not growing right. I'm
yeah,
like, I feel bad, but I'm like, how long ago did you get it? And they're like 3 years ago. And I'm like, well, what did the breeder say? And they're like, oh, that it like hatched like 4 years ago. And I was like, so it's probably 4 years old. They're like, yeah, but like it doesn't look like it's grown right. And I'm like, well,
yeah,
hognoses, every species, and I don't get why people don't understand this all too much, but we have vastly different sizes for human beings. You've got Yao Ming, who's like 8 feet tall. And then
yeah,
you got Danny DeVito, who's a little bowling ball man.
yeah,
And it's like, God bless both of them, but they're both human beings. And certain hognoses might just be the Danny DeVitos of hognoses, and some
mm-hmm,
males just might not want to grow that large. Like, I've got a male. He's my het Lucy. His name's Lucian. He's 5 years old now, and he has not wanted to grow past 40 grams. He rolls into a poop emoji. You can find him on my Instagram. And I've just accepted at this point that he is, in fact, my pet only poop emoji and certain stuff like that. That male, he eats consistently every time. I leave him a fuzzy every time. He even takes hopper sometimes. But guess what? Doesn't want to grow more, doesn't want to interact with anything. I put him in with a female. He poop
mm-hmm.
emojis in the corner, doesn't move.
That's
And
it.
that's it. You just have to accept it. And
Yeah,
that's another thing is like project wise, probably want to get like people say like a 1 to 2, maybe probably like a 2 to 2, because sometimes the males, I had one guy named Kratos, and his name got changed to Cupid because he was not the big strong badass I hoped he was. He was a scared little guy, and he just hides in the corner. So he's Cupid now.
yeah,
And some are just like that, whereas I've got the Arctic Lavender Toffee male. He was 40 something grams when he first bred. Now he's 70 something grams. His name's Prince because he gets it done in a half hour. Just magic like that. Some are super confident. I've got David, who is a 150-gram male, who's like 8 years old now. And that's like huge for a male. So it's like certain people and certain animals are certain sizes.
yeah,
The Sable hypo female took like 4 years to even get to like 160 grams just because she was a smaller, slower grower. And it's like a lot of people are just too, I think, worried and too in depth to hoping that they're taking good care of the animal, that they get too much into like the semantics of it. Whereas like just make sure that like the questions that should be asked are like, does this high nose like look hydrated? Does it look healthy? How does its lower end look? Does it look like it might have crypto? Stuff like that. Questions like that would do better for these customers versus like hoping to know the age, because with the variability of it all, I mean, the species can live up to
yeah,
20 years.
mm-hmm,
So it's like, but they could also at any moment, as any other living being could pass away. So even if I was able to determine based on like showing me the size of the snake, oh, this is like 7 years old, what good might that like, it may give someone like so I might have 13 years left. I might have 7 years left. But at the end of the day, it's like, is this hognose healthy? Is this hognose doing okay? Does it have an RI? Are there any mites? Does like, those are the questions where I be more like, oh, all right, like this person cares about like the health of this animal versus like, oh, like the aesthetic of this is really cool. I'm just trying to figure stuff out to be able to, it's like, that's awesome. But like, just, it can't get that in depth if you don't talk to the original breeder.
100%.
I know
And
that was a long circle around back to that, but
yeah,
that was like, if you don't talk to them, you're never going to find out that information. And with a lot of people, unfortunately, that's when you find out that they're a reseller, because you're like, oh, you can't tell me the information. Well,
hmm
who can? It's like, oh, all right, well, now you find out that that is
yeah,
who that
yeah,
person is. You're like,
yeah,
crap.
man. And you know what? And I'm gonna plug into Patreon right now because this is one thing that I want to work towards is building that community where people can go and feel safe, ask questions, and actually get an answer instead of getting berated about it. Getting shouted at through messages and all
Exactly.
caps, stuff like that. Because I think we do need that community where you have somebody that has experience, have a group of people that can come together and figure it out together as well. Community is the biggest thing within any hobby, or especially with the animals. And I want to give a shout out to a couple of the Patreon members right now that we have. And we have Nico the Merce. So Nico, I met him in Houston, Texas, and he got, for his first hognose, a Arctic lavender head albino male from us.
So he went in hot.
Yeah, man. He was one of those guys that I talked to him and his partner for a while at that show, and I goes, "Are you?" And this is one of the questions I asked. I was like, "Are you sure you want this animal for your first hognose?" And he goes, "Yeah, I've done the research. This is exactly what I want, and I'm doing it." And ended up getting it. So
Complete
big shout out to him.
complete opposite of me.
Yeah, big shout out to him. Yeah, Guff Reptiles, Casey, local South Florida guy here, big supporter of ours. Guy just got another hognose from us a couple weeks ago. Got a double het Mai Tai yearling male for us a steal. So because he's been such a supporter, give him a great deal. And then we have Josh and Alicia Harpin Harbins, another big supporter of ours. Always a good source of information and some really cool hognose. And they have ball pythons, hognose, and corns as well. So if you guys looking for a community, that we're building, check out the Patreon link in the description below and stuff like that. Little by little, just building a little bit more people together. With we talked about like information and stuff like that, and one of the other biggest things that we don't talk about is hydration um, in hognose. And I was listening to this. If you heard about the, was it Kluberfest that happened last year, right?
Yes.
So I joined the
Heard
CCR.
of it, didn't hear what happened, but it sounds like something happened.
So it went well. So and stuff like that. It was a success rate, and they had these reptile talks there. One of the topics that I was like, basically almost the only topic I was really concerned about there was egg binding. And hognose, we hear about it all the time, and I'm just like, why? What is it that why do we see it in hognose so much? So that was one thing that I was very invested to see what came about. And I wasn't there in person, but I watched the replay of the talks, and I went and watched that one. And one of the biggest things that I saw was hydration problems. And then as well, I took my female that I lost. I had taken her to the vet, and the vet also told me the same thing: hydration. When
Same thing with the girl that passed that I told you about. She, in the matter of a couple days,
mhm,
it looked like she got like, it wasn't even a couple days, man. It's crazy. She
like
went from like
overnight,
a normal,
yeah,
yeah, like a normal bodied
yep,
snake
yeah,
to just looking like she just spent like a couple days in the desert, and
yep,
it just shocks you because you're like,
uh,
what happened?
yeah.
And
So
but yeah, continue.
That being said, there, they talked about other stuff too. It was a vet being putting on the talk, so it wasn't just anecdotal,
Somebody.
super, experimental stuff. It was actual vet that has experience with reptiles, and they talked about that. He talked about lay box styles, colors, all that stuff that could be help with preventing egg binding. But I think they harped on that on hydration. So one of those biggest things I took that this year was, all right, I am gonna overhydrate all my females this year. So that's one of the biggest things I've been doing a lot. Today, actually, I did a full clean on the females, and um, one of the things that let's see, hopefully, we'll see how if I have any egg bindings issues this year and stuff like that. If not, then what I did this year was, as I'm cleaning their bins, I put them in a like tub like that you have behind you with water and then some hydration, some electrolyte powder to see if it makes a difference. Hopefully that the information I took, and hopefully my new process of hydrating the females, especially when I'm seeing them going into shed where they're going to lay soon, um, helps out. And I'll keep everybody updated on if I have zero egg binding, then we,
Then you try again next year, and
then we try again next
then you,
year,
exactly,
and then if there's success, then there's something to be said about it. But
exactly.
we have a species where you give them water, they have a water bowl, but how often do you really see them
Oh,
go and drink?
there's, I can tell you right now, I've got this one sunburst male. I love him to death, but like unless you waterboard him, like so I have to waterlog his fuzzies for him specifically because
Hmm.
he's so inconsistent. Like I'll dunk him in water, won't want to drink it, spray him down. He'll drink some of that off the what's it called, walls. But I'll waterlog his pinks, or not pinks, sorry, fuzzies rather, so that it's full of water, as waterlogging is, just so that he gets some form of
Hmm.
hydration.
Hmm.
Just because it's like, man, if you're not gonna do it on your own, I'm gonna have to find some way to do it for you
Yep.
because I've noticed, and like I said, it's 82 degrees in here. Water disappears within 2 days in this friggin' place. So if you're
Yeah.
not consistent with it, you're gonna have you're gonna have bad results. And that's one of the loopholes that comes with keeping it so hot. Some people say that they could leave their water for a week and it would still be there. Not when it's this hot. When it's this hot, that water evaporated 2 days before you thought it would.
Hmm.
So it's like if you're not on like a three, like how hot do you have it in your
So I
for
keep
ambient?
my room pretty cool. It's usually around 76, 78.
Yeah. So people are like, oh, 76, 78, that's not much of a
Yeah.
difference. Lower 82 is like the
It's
point where, I mean, you've seen me do this and I'm through 2 bottles already. It's like
yeah.
just sitting here is like making you sweat. And it's just like, they can't sweat. How do you think they feel?
Hmm.
So it's like, you gotta keep the consistency with the hydration because
Hmm.
I, I forget what it is for humans, but they can go months without eating, but everything needs water within days. Everything.
Correct. Correct.
So it's like some people fail to like kind of acknowledge that, I think, where
Hmm.
it's like, and with their water too is like a lot of people don't see it, but like people will just leave the water for like it's a double-sided sword because or a double-edged sword because it evaporates quickly, have to stay on top of it, could be bad for the animals, but also they don't really pee in it, they don't poop in it. Because I noticed when I used to use these fluker water dishes, they
Hmm.
would pee in those a lot. And it's like you let that sit and then they go drink it. You don't know what's going on.
Yep.
Or you don't know if they're I'd like to think they're intelligent enough to not drink it and knew that that's where they wanted to go to the bathroom. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, once I started getting my rat snakes and stuff, like my Vietnamese blue beauty, dream species of mine, I love him.
Yeah.
He's so intelligent. You can see him look around and think. With a lot of my hognoses, you don't see that going on. They're
No.
just like, yeah, they just decide what they're going to do and they do it. And I still love them with all of my heart, but it's like they're not. I get when people call them derpy. Like I
Yeah.
get why they call them silly. It's like once you work with more intelligent species, you realize, all right, the smartest hognose is nowhere even close to like the dumbest rat snake, and
Yeah.
it's because of how they are as a species, and you can't fault them for it.
Hmm.
It's just the way that they evolved.
Yeah. So I think and that maybe, now talking out loud about it, it's maybe that's why reason we see so much egg binding in hognose, because they are not a species that goes and drinks, straight out of a bowl and stuff like that. Where, like you said, you have to dunk their heads and hold them sometimes in there. It's like I have those that I'll grab, I'll dunk their head in and let them go, and they stop drinking.
Yeah, they
You
don't do
know,
anything.
and then if I hold them, they guzzle down water like they haven't drank water in 2 years, right? Um, so
Have
hopefully
you
that.
noticed the difference between putting the water cup above the substrate or below it? Have you noticed that, like anything like
Um,
that?
no, I haven't. I keep my, water bowl above the substrate so it doesn't get all the sandy chips in or any, the substrate in there.
Yep.
Um, but I
I
haven't
notice they
noticed
drink
it
more when I do it like level. Sandy chips
level.
do get in, but I
Yeah.
notice when I keep it level because it gets so hot and evaporates.
Mm,
They will go and search for it more when it's level, but when it's raised, like I genuinely, unfortunately, they're dumb, but I genuinely think that they're so stupid they bump into that, and some of
you're
them are
like, oh,
like, well,
water.
that
Yeah.
yeah, oh, unlucky. Why can't I drink
Yeah.
this? Like, and then they go on. So I have noticed that the ones that are a little submerged do a little bit better.
Yep.
VX. Oh, VX mentioned earlier that his Arctic Het Lucy boy got stuck at 53. Maybe it's in the Het Lucy. Like maybe they're just all upset. I know that was a
Yeah.
thing we used to talk about a while in the hobby. Was anything Lucy with it was just out for blood. That doesn't really get talked about. I don't hear
No.
all
Yeah.
that often.
What is wild? I just added my first Lucy project this year. Um, but
Smart.
what I've heard was visual Lucy's are always take a little longer to grow as well, just to get that growth spurt.
Oh,
Um,
my female was a savage. No,
yeah,
she grew. You know how I told you like some people get their females to
yeah,
like certain crazy sizes. So with her, she was on two fuzzies every 4 days from when she started her growth spurt, and she randomly got to like 160 grams in her first
hmm
year.
hmm
And I wasn't trying to power feed her, and so I slowed down, and she still kept growing. And
yeah,
so I don't. And the funny part is the amount of people that ask me, they're like, "Oh, so you're not just gonna breed your Lucy?" And I'm like, why? If the Het Lucy doesn't want to do it, and there's all of these other projects on the market that people are pumping out. So I'm
hmm
not just going to make hets to make hets. I was like, and again, circling back to, is the project worth what I value the animal as to myself sentimentally? And is the potential to make Lucy's or the potential to make it worth the animal to me? And unfortunately, you see my logo. That logo is literally traced of her face. That like I love her pretty goddamn
yeah,
close to a lot like Athena and the other one I mentioned to you. And it's like you develop a bond with an animal, and when people ask you why you didn't do that project, oh, it could have made you this much money. I'm like, because if that animal died, that money wouldn't replace the fact that I would hate myself and I would never be able to get to interact with her again. And like,
yeah,
I think the only way, and admittedly, the only way I got to that mentality was because of having to deal with egg binding and loss and all of that stuff, which only comes about when you first start trying to breeding or start try to breed rather. So it's like, God, I love her, and it's incredible, like to be able to do that stuff and have the opportunity to. But not every project needs to be done, even if you
hmm
have the means to do it.
hmm yeah, man. And you know what? And with that, like, just to make just to have animals produce out of it, it's sometimes not worth it. And we're talking about before the show started a little bit, a few minutes, and you're still in a great spot where you're still technically a hobbyist, right? You're
Yeah.
not running a business where you're you need to produce every year to keep it going and stuff like that. Um, and one thing though, even though I'm running a business, I always say the day that I sit here and I stress about producing animals every year, or either the quantity, a certain morph, um, it's probably the day I'm not gonna enjoy doing it anymore. Um, you
You're
know.
gonna, yeah, you're gonna end up looking at yourself and being like, what have I turned this into?
hmm
And
hmm
all of that passion that you put into it is gonna have to be overridden by the fact that it is now like a means to an end. So it's like keeping the positive mentality and just like knowing that like the projects that you want to do are the projects that you want to do, and just being steadfast in that, while also keeping a keen eye on the market and knowing that you'll be able to still move things.
Yep.
Like, for example, people breed, like, it sounds like rough, but if you're breeding posset to posset right now, it's just like a side like breeder and not like a larger breeder who's able to do multiple possets. It's going to be tough. Like, the market's gotten to the point now where you can't have posset storm cloud stuff and try to sell it for
Yeah.
anything, because we already got to the point where storm cloud stuff's already reasonable for the
Yep.
heads. So it's like you can't produce things. And if you have posset to posset, is like, I know the, what's it called? The Rare Genetics has it for ball pythons. I know they were speaking about hog noses over the last few years. I don't know if they're getting around to morphs at all anytime soon. Haven't heard
I
all
had
too
him.
much.
I had him on the podcast a few months ago, and they're saying hopefully by the end of the year they'll have 5 different genetic testing for hognose.
Which is a
But
significant leap, yeah.
but it's still theoretical for them. It's it's a hope that they'll have it. But if we don't see it this year, hopefully beginning of next year we'll see some stuff coming out of there. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Because
So with that stuff, it's
yeah.
like those possets that we were just talking about. That'd be the only way to know that that's worth breeding.
Yeah. And talking about possets, I'm gonna put another plug in here. I have a auction that's going up right now that just started today. It's a AAA 50% het sunburst male. If you guys are looking for something like that, want to gamble on the pos het there and get a cool AAA, make sure you go check out that auction. Go bid on it. But yeah,
Beautiful triple A.
yeah,
I love
it's
the ones that have the orange tangerine highlights
they're
on
cool,
top
man.
of it.
They're cool. I think that's one of like the staples that can't go
Triple A's
anywhere.
will never get old.
Can
Oh,
never go into, and people
never.
I produced them last year because, we talked about, you did a couple shows last year, and 2023, crazy to think about that. I started doing the
Yeah.
shows, and I enjoyed
Wow. Yeah.
them.
It's been, wow.
They were a great way for me to make new connections, for get my snakes out to people. Now here's the thing, it was early, my first production was 2023, so early, by late 2023 I was already had run out of the lower end stuff, because I produce a lot of corals, arctic stuff and stuff like that. So 2024 I said to myself, let me produce a little bit more for the shows, because I was planning to do at least one show a month. Um, and I produce a good amount of triple A's and stuff like that, and it's gone well. People love them at the shows. It's a great, first of all, it's a great price range
And
where
they're
somebody,
crazy looking.
and yeah, exactly, where somebody's can pay a little extra premium on an albino for get some extra cool, looking animal, but it's not it's not going to empty out your pockets 100%, and you still have room to be able to set up and all that stuff. So that's one of my things I did last year. I did a good amount of triple A's and stuff, and happy about it. Saw some cool stuff. I kept one. So like it's cool to see, like, when you produce stuff that you want to keep, that's when it gets really cool.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. That's so. I mean, you're one of 3 people that has one that I released to other people, but the
Hmm.
Super Arctic Conda triple het laugh toffee albinos,
Hmm.
those were like, the only reason I did release it to anyone was essentially because it was like, how many of these is it worth keeping back for? I was like, because if I keep every single one of them back, that not only means that I'm responsible to make sure that all of the lines are outcrossed and everything like that, then that also means that I have to put way more work in to do that and buy
Yep.
more animals to make
Yep.
sure that that's so. It's like kind of in that mentality where I'm like, or it's you, Eslin, and Wes so far, because I one of them in hands of people who had laugh toffee stuff or could get laugh toffee stuff, because it's like, like I said, I want people to make the animals for my projects
Hmm.
that I want to be done. And it's like that whole, like, I've always been raised on the, like, don't step on someone else's back to get where you're going. And it's not like that's the instance of what's happening with people, but I feel like that's kind of what happens when people withhold certain stuff to get ahead. And it's completely not wrong to do it all.
Yeah.
It's for people specific projects. But like in the scope of knowing what I'm capable of as a breeder, like you said, it's like when you're a smaller breeder and stuff like that, and you don't have unlimited options to do certain stuff, it makes it so that you're like, all right, what could this project be if someone else with more capable hands was able to work on it? And so it's like being able to spread out projects and make sure that other people, like, because it's not like you didn't want to work on the project. It's like-minded stuff where it's like you want to see what that looks like too. And it's like people who want to make the animals should have the animals. And it's like, number one, odds, like I have 1 in 16 or 1 in 32 to make storm clouds. And it's like, if there's definitely way better animals out there, there's storm cloud to storm cloud pairings, or Sable to head antics and stuff like that. And it's like, at this point, I'm probably not doing that pairing again. And it's like, as great as it's made the storm clouds and stuff like that for me in the past, it's like, it's time for me to move away and start working on other projects, because there's just so much snowburst stuff now. So it's like, I've done my storm cloud stuff. I have my projects to make that, my storm cloud females, Pos albino, my Sable condos, my Axanthic condos, the stuff that I want for that project. But then understanding like, oh, it's time for me to like stray away from that. This project's like already going like super, super well, and focusing where you want to like do stuff. Like it's kind of rambly, but like, I guess the point I'm trying to get at is like, more or less just focus on going towards what you want to make and what you want to see other people make and what you want to see more of in the hobby, versus like just pumping something out and being like, oh, well, I made this. How much money is this? And instantly going to like Morph Market or checking something like that. The project should be like, oh, I made this. And admittedly, it's kind of weird to me, but I track people's projects and stuff like that. I see what they've made, things of that. Because I'm like, for example, Wes, I think I mentioned a few times, 8420, but he's one of the people I know that has left Toffee stuff. And I'm really excited for him to potentially make some crosses into this line, because it's from a completely different line. And I know he has male left Toffees. And like Eslin, I know he has male left Toffees. So stuff like that, like I know these people are going to make the animals that I want to see made. So even if I fail, the animal itself will be being made. So it's like, that's what I care about. The only crappy thing is like, I can't be like, hey, all right, you made it. All right, on my first flight, like that stuff is, but like, other than that, it's like, I'd rather people try to work on crazy projects versus being like, well, this sells well. But at the same time, like you said, there's a certain threshold where it's like, you need those animals to keep your projects and your passions alive.
Yeah.
Caitlin's got some cool ones from the triple hat stuff. The Arctic Condas came out crazy from that stuff too.
Yeah. And that's the one thing with, man, like producing certain animals, like it was, and I've talked about this. I produced the triple heads last year of Acid Rain, and the main reason I did is because I didn't want albino in it. I could have got stuff that had albino, maybe a visual that would be triple head for Snowburst.
So you wanted to make sure it wasn't there.
I wanted to make sure it wasn't there, so I was like, I'm just gonna do it myself, right? And that I didn't have maybe a few weeks ago, I had another breeder message me looking for one of those females. I didn't have any listed on my Morph Market because what I think I had released 2, they sold, and I had, if I'm not wrong, 4 that I held back. And it was one of those things like, I'm gonna hold back. Let's see what they look like. And the female, that produced those. Actually, no, the male that produced it, he was an RB toxic from Rick as well. So
He's the best. All right, so I'm glad you knew who he was.
So
his RBE line looks pretty dang cool.
Yeah. So I go, all right, I got to keep this to see what happens with the RBE. Let's see if it influences stuff like that. So they're already almost a year old. So that breeder messaged me. It's like, this is what I'm looking for. Do you have anything? I go, I have 4 females. I'm willing to let one go. It's like, if you're going to work the project, go ahead and, gave somebody something they were looking for, willing to let it go. I could have been said, no, I don't have anything. I need to keep all four because I want to have the best odds I can to be able to produce out of triple head stuff. Right. Um,
Exactly.
but I think,
But yeah,
being able to give somebody an option of working that insane project, why not? We're such a, especially in the hog nose, we're such a small community. Even with all of us, newer breeders popping up and stuff like that, we're still such a small community that it comes back in full circle really quick. Where
oh yeah,
that animal went to there. Let's see what they produce from there. A few generations now. Hey, I need to get something from there, right? It all works that same way.
yeah. It's like my mentality for that is like I would be so right now. I'm just thinking of the process where it's like I would be excited to have an acid rain female. I'd be like, all right, that's like super awesome. This is a really badass project. Thank you so
Mhm.
much. And it's like some people think it's a marketing play. Oh, well, I've got 4 holdbacks, and it's like, no, I actually have that many, and this is how many I like,
Mhm.
and I might consider letting one go. And it's
Yep.
like it's not. It's like there's a lot of us. I'd say probably at least 90% of us that are like, no, these are our project animals that we're working towards. We have a vision, like
Yeah.
this is what we want to do. And it's like it's crazy to see that, but it's like so many people actually, and it's weird because as much of the hobby that has similar projects, I feel like right now is like the most diverse everyone's projects have ever been. And it's like, not to like, again, it doesn't, with the limited experience, it's like thinking on it, knowing that like Sable came out in 2015 and like a gene like PPA came out in the 90s and like seeing those get crossed together now where it's like a gene from all the way back then that's just starting to get like better PPA is a weird one with me. I don't know much about it. I've just seen some weird things and just the fertility issues that people say they have and stuff like that has kept me away. But with what people have been doing with it recently, it does look like it's actually been getting better.
Yeah.
Like, but again, who am I to say? Like, I'm nobody to say that it may be getting better, but I haven't seen the issues that people have been saying.
Mhm.
But with stuff like that, it's like feel free. Like, just don't work with stuff that is potentially deadly to the animals, but work
Correct.
with whatever you want because we've seen it with what's it called, lily whites and uh, cresties, where it's
Mhm.
like super to super, it kills them, and yet some
Mhm.
people still are trying to work it out, and it's like no, it's like that again revolves back to the world's first kind of mentality where it's like I can be the person who does it. It's like, no, how many animals do you have to torture to get there? It's
Yeah.
like, as long as your projects are done in a healthy, biosecure way with, just, uh, I don't know how to say like without crossing in mind, just for like
Yeah.
for biodiversity and genetics, just making sure of that. Like, it's not that hard to have a great project. It's not. Just make sure that you have genes that you want to work with. Uh, and like, what was it? I know it's a little rambly, but this person really liked like I was showing them like the AAA snows and the super Arctic snows, and not necessarily like we're able to get into the project at a price point that was like reasonable, but instead of being like, oh, like turn the shoulder, I was like, I can do this for you if it means that you want to work on this project. And they were like 100%, I'll take that. And it's like being able to do that and being able to like have that not kind of control but the ability to give people the opportunity to work in projects kind of feels like you were saying it's like that full circle feeling where it's like you can what you put into the hobby is gonna give it back
Yeah.
whether it's positive or negative because like trying to hide things is perfect in its own way, but I feel like there's more benefit to and I'm speaking from like my standpoint. It's more beneficial for me to be able to be like, oh, if you have this animal from a project I like and you have an animal from a project I like, hopefully you'll be able to get that and there will be more of them. Because it's like I don't care if someone hits a world's first, I don't care if someone makes 20 of them all at the same time. It's like the fact that those finally are there is what matters. And that should be what people care about in their projects, not like, oh, this is a $1,200 snake, because you and I both know that rarely happens where you're like, hatch this perfect amount of food, post it, instantly sold. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, there's so much more work to it. There's so much more haggle. And I don't mean just with customers or whatnot. I'm saying like there's just so much more wiggle room to all of this versus it just being like a, oh, hatch, post, feed, list, perfect, sold. It's like you have to just you have to have that passion, I guess. Like you can just tell when
Yeah.
people like don't want the same thing as you, like when it
Yeah.
comes to it. I don't know, it's a weird way
You
to
know,
try to describe it, but you can just tell.
yeah. And you know what? It's like I have, and we're talking. You mentioned like the super Arctic snow stuff, and and like adding extreme red to it. And I have um one female left from this from the I think it's this female here that I have left over, the top female. Is they're triple A's het snow from the extreme red lineage and stuff like that. And that's one thing, like I still look at this female and boggles my mind. It's like, why hasn't she sold? It's such a cool
Yeah.
project, so awesome looking animal. I was like, is my picture a bad picture? The one I have a morph mark and stuff like that. But
I
then
feel
they
like
also
people
get,
think they've been done.
yeah, I think maybe that's it. But like, and that's one thing, is like it goes to the point where it's like it's so easy for me to say, if it doesn't sell by a year old, it's staying here, because
Mhm.
it's not gonna hurt me at all feeding one more animal. You can't do that with every, animal you have up for sale. So it's like, oh, if it doesn't sell, it's gonna keep it. But something like this that I, really enjoy that project, it's not gonna hurt for me to have an extra female and grow it up.
No.
And then, maybe I don't make snows with it. Maybe I go a different route. But there's something
People
there.
don't people don't think of that either, which I love. I love that you just brought that up. You
Hmm.
could breed that to a sable lavender if you wanted to.
Correct.
Now you have, oh crap, nothing pops out of that. You're like, oh, Arctic condas. Yeah, but they're het albino, lavender, sable, and 50 het axanthic. Are all of those genes together great? No, but you don't have to use all of the genetics in your animals. And then say you pop out those Arctic condas that are het for all of that, but then you want to bring it back to your snow line. So then you breed a purple extreme red snow to that. Now you
Hmm.
have Arctic condas, and say it proves that
Yeah.
are now snow. So Arctic snow condas that are now 50 het lab, 50 het sable. And it's like, I know a lot of or not a lot, but a couple of the projects that Jeff has mentioned before, JMG, he's gotten because of possets and being able to just like do posset to posset.
Hmm.
And so many people aren't willing to like risk that because they're like, oh, they just write it off. They're like, oh, that would never. And then it does. And now all of a sudden you have an amazing project that you're just able to, do. And for whatever reason, it just like gets written off. But like I told you, the male Bubs, who was 66 Eddie's Xanthic, proved, and I made those snows. So it's like it. I don't get why people write off the possets. Like
Yeah.
I love having confidence knowing that 100% hets are 100%, and it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But I guess the little gambling in you, the little gambling ghoul on my
Yeah.
shoulder is
Well, you
like,
know what, man? I
but
think this is what happened, right? And we are, within the last 5 years, we are all probably guilty of this. And it's sitting down, seeing a cool animal you saw, going on the morph market calculator, and sitting, oh, if I get this animal, if I get that animal, I can possibly, these are like odds, I'm gonna hit this, right? Um, and then I think now we're reaching to the hognose, breeding is moving so fast now, so more people are doing it, where like you were saying, there is people that feel like, all right, I need to produce visuals next year. I need to produce visuals, so I need to get visuals to produce more visuals. um and I think that road is a dead end road eventually.
oh
um
yeah,
you
you
know
burn
I,
out.
yeah, 100%, you burn out. And if you don't have a way to recover, that could be the end of it. And not trying to like discredit what people are doing, stuff like that. It's longevity in this world that we live in, that we're part of, is the most important part of it. And I look, I have friends that breed ball pythons that have been around for 20 years and stuff like that, and like seeing their longevity and seeing what they've done is that it's producing stuff they enjoy, producing stuff that sells at shows, and also having the higher end projects and stuff like that, a little bit of everything. But at the end of the day, looking forward to the next couple years, not what I'm producing today. And that being said, it's like,
That futuristic
even,
optimism for the
yeah,
project.
even like as a hobbyist, how far in advance are you thinking about projects right now?
Oh, I usually do the 5 to 10er. Well, because you could ask Avery. I call it my cabin in the woods projects.
Mm-hmm.
So every single thing that I do, I ultimately am like, would I be able to sustain doing this in a cabin in the woods if I just wanted to go off the grid?
Mm-hmm.
If I like, because if I could sit in a cabin in the woods with these projects and able to sustain them with my animals, like, would I be able to do that? Be like, yes, I would go off the face of the planet in an instant if I was able to do that. But living off grid's pretty difficult and impossible. So so with a lot of the projects, with the live toffee sable stuff, for example, it's like with the Arctic mix in there, that alone could be a completely different project 5 years from now versus 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
Something might look better versus like another thing. Like I got really lucky, and my Arctic Laugh Toffee produced by Travis Whistler happens to be an Arctic Laugh Toffee that I bought as a Laugh Toffee. And I know Mark over at Dragon Herpetology has a brother of his that also proved to be an Arctic Laugh Toffee. So it's like discerning between Laugh Toffees and Arctic Laugh Toffees is tough as hatchling. So I want to see what that's about, and I want
Yeah.
to be able to like test that.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily like a super super short project, because I breed Laugh Toffee from what's it called? I could breed the Laugh Toffee from West Burt over to those Arctic triple hets, and then say I pop out a Laugh Toffee that looks different, or an Arctic Laugh Toffee. Like I know Jeff's Arctic Laugh Toffees look different than my line, because his
Mm-hmm.
line are from his that he made from his own, and my line is from Travis. So it's like with all these different color morphs and stuff, it's like there's so many different possibilities. And with it being a triple het, it's like I know John at Fathom has for sure Arctic Sables het Laugh Toffee, and I think he probably has some condas that he's held back. Because I think I've seen him mention it. I'm not sure. Is that AJ? Because if that's AJ, he might know. But those are friggin' crazy badass animal projects, and I wish I was
Yeah.
able to make those. But those, once he starts popping like those combos together and stuff like that, like I can't wait. Like I'm gonna be harassing the hell out of him if I ever see him post on a story that he's doing those
Yeah,
pairing.
man.
Because it's like at the end of the day, like I first saw Lucy when they were like $8,000, and I was like, man, hopefully I'll own one of those one day. And I got around to owning one day,
Mm-hmm.
and then like so many of these, it's like it gives you that kind of like I said, legendary Pokemon feel, where like that feeling of awe, where you're like, did they edit this photo? Is
Yeah.
this animal this crazy looking? Like Acid Rain. I don't have any animals from the project, but I guarantee you the moment I see an Acid Rain for the first time in person, I'm gonna sit there for a while.
Look, man,
Like,
we're in the same. I saw a picture and it hooked me. And you know, both ends of the project are super cool. My
oh,
time.
and
You
he
know,
just let. I can't wait.
so
I cannot wait.
yeah.
Like it, Kid on Christmas. I cannot wait.
So two different lines. Yeah, yeah. So those two ends of the projects, the Mai Tais and Storm Clouds. So I was like, even I've seen maybe two pictures of a acid rain, triple visual, and it's like it got me hooked. I think it was maybe 2 years ago. And I was like,
Coming
I
out
have
of
to get
yeah.
one.
Is it that same? Was it Dan's picture? Yeah,
Yeah, I saw Dan's. I saw Dan's, and
and the
then
perlite.
yeah, yep, and then
That's the one
the
I saw.
NRG too, something like that.
Oh
NRGs,
yeah, yeah. Missed the NRG.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But
they've been a little quiet.
here's the thing. I haven't seen adults, right? And we always like, we're the adults. I want to see adults. But even those baby pictures, it was something I want to see come into fruition in my collection. So it's one of those things, like you just got to follow whatever really sparks that interest. And then one of the first morphs combos that I really enjoyed seeing was toxics. For the simplicity of they are just super clean animals. They were beautiful. So I think toxic in anything is going to make it look cool. That combo, if anything, is going to make it look cool.
The RBE stuff's it's
Yeah.
such a good line. Like
Yeah.
with so it's so different. Like it's not silver. It's like a gray, but it's
Hmm.
like like I don't know how it's like a streamlined gray that's
Hmm.
like almost reflective, and it's like it feels like more shiny in a weird way.
Yeah. Oh,
Caramel Storms have the X's heart.
caramel storms have his art.
Oh, those, yeah. What did he? I know. I think his name's Kyle. I don't want to mess that up. I don't know that him too much. It's like Prestige
Prestige
Colubids or
corns,
Corns.
something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
he's got some crazy stuff that he's
He does.
posted
He
where
does.
it's like, and the thing is, so many people are probably like, man, I really wish I had that snake. Work towards it. Like
Hmm.
that's the thing is
Hmm.
like animals like that are incredible, and it's like I haven't even made a laugh toffee yet. I have them and I love them, but like nothing's gonna compare for me for that moment that I see a laugh toffee pop out of the egg. And it's like stuff like that is you just like you kind of said with toxics, is like eventually you'll find that morph, or even if it's not a morph, like a poly line, like red
Yeah.
or a purple line or even lemon ghost, which morph, but not morph in quotations, but they are morphs. So I'm not saying that they
Yeah.
aren't,
Yeah.
but it's like you'll find that and you'll sit there and someone will be like, no, but this is the popular project to do. And you'll be like, yeah, but like this. And you'll be like, no, but like if you do this now, and you'll be like, yeah, but if I do that now, I can't do this. This means more to me. Like lavender toffee. I love it so much. I've said it a billion times tonight. It's like all of that. It's not that popular of a project. I see maybe one or two, but if I talk about it enough and
Yeah.
enough people have them and want to make them, and
Once
then they
people
see
start
them,
seeing them in person, it's gonna
yes,
blow up because they are super clean. Like that combo, it's amazing. Luckily I can see some of this stuff in
the
person.
bellies
As
too. People don't see
it's
the
so
bellies, and
cool.
you look at
It's
it and
cool.
you're like, why is this doing this?
Hmm.
They're
Hmm.
so cool. And
Yeah.
you want to know what would have been miserable? If I kept every single cool animal back and had to inbreed them all and then gave people my creation, but it was like subpar now because,
Hmm.
I got there on a shortcut.
Hmm.
And it's not technically a shortcut, but I'm saying like I'd rather it be this multi crazy like multi project or crazy person project where everyone's trying to work towards them and everyone's trying to make a lavender toffee. And a lot of the ones I sold had Arctic in them. So it's like now they're going to make Arctic lav toffee.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, what's wrong with that? Nothing. And it's like, oh, but then other people are going to be selling lav toffees and stuff. And it's like, great.
Yeah.
It was like now more people are going to be buying lav toffees and more people are going to be wanting to do the project that I love.
Yep.
And what's wrong with that? Nothing.
Yep.
Because I want to see more lav toffee hog noses. I want to see more lav toffee conda hog noses, Arctic lav toffee conda. I want
Yeah.
to see super Arctic. And it's like, I
Even
can't do that
even
if it's just
yeah.
me.
Even the byproducts of that project are sick.
Oh, yeah.
Even like,
Use one gene.
yeah, super Arctic, Arctic or super Arctic lives, Arctic or super Arctic toffees, and that's another underrated project. Super Arctic toffees,
Oh, I love my pink punch male. They're beautiful. I don't get
super
why people
underrated.
don't like them.
I think again, not enough people have seen them in person.
It's
They
my
have
most like real, most weed real.
such a wide variance of color and stuff like that. And that's another thing too, where we haven't figured out how to take pictures of these animals. You know,
Yeah, there's something in the lighting. It just even like outdoor cameras, it like pictures, it doesn't do them justice.
yeah.
My new phone, I have an iPhone, the new iPhone, and the
Hmm.
camera is like really good but really bad at the same time. Like I can't send anyone pictures on Instagram. Like I
Mm,
can't open the thing and record it because it's got a macro slash not macro lens. So it's constantly zooming in and unfocusing and refocusing.
yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
you got to use your regular camera. And so it's like as advanced as these cameras are getting, it feels like you're going backwards.
Hmm.
It's like
You know what's the
super Arctic
problem?
Toffee,
Yeah.
100%.
The problem with the phone cameras is that they're too smart. They're doing too
Oh yeah,
much
they're
at
trying to
once.
compensate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because and it's crazy because you snap a picture and it's a snap and you see it, but once it
Renders or whatever it
renders
needed
away,
to do.
it's totally different.
Oh, do you have an iPhone? Because live
Yeah,
photos were the bane of my friggin' existence for
yeah. I
so
turned it
long.
off.
I take a
I turned it
picture
off.
and it's like,
I turned it
and I'm
off.
like, what the heck's going on? I was like, that's not what I did.
Yeah,
Or like if you go to do a video and you hit slow-mo accidentally and you think you just had the best video of your life, and now you have a 7-minute long video of you trying to record a hog nose doing, and you're like, no. It's like,
yeah.
man, I just want you to record the video. Like, please just record.
That's fine.
It's just too smart these days.
So we're gonna start closing this thing out because we can go
Okay,
another
yes,
2 hours.
we will,
But 2025. You got brumation starting off soon. What's your main goal for 2025 for your breedings?
breeding wise. So I've mentioned the lab toffee stuff. So that I know some people might be excited for me to be doing those projects and stuff now that it's
Yeah.
finally time. And I probably do arguably have some of the most for that project, because what I didn't say was I do have all those females, but I did keep back a couple Arctic Conda females, a couple normals, a few regular like Arctics. Because it's like you said, the potential for those animals, people are like, well, you kept back that much of the stuff. It was like I could breed the super Arctic toffee male to one of them, and it's a completely different project. It's like an albino. I could make Bub's daddies out of these that are posset lavender, posset toffee. It's like people think that just because it's an Arctic lav toffee albino or Arctic het lav toffee albino for one of these animals, it's not got as much value for certain projects. And it's like I could breed the coral that I have. I could breed that to a normal Arctic lav toffee or het lav toffee conda or male, because I have conda or geez, tongue twister. I have Arctic conda het lav toffee albino, so I don't need to guarantee with the super Arctic conda male that I have to produce Arctics. So I have the option to make it so that they don't do that. So the reason I did it was because I want to be able to potentially make super Arctic lav toffees. I want to be able to make Arctic conda lav toffees, stuff like that. And I also want to make regular lav toffees and lavs het toffees, stuff like that. And toffee het lav is like, because for me, I'm trying to experience all the different aspects of this project and then hone in how I want to refine it. Because for me, these are other people's lines that they've worked on for super long, and these are my baseline. Like I said, like I put no work into it other than buying the animals. So like for now, it's like me using the basics. And I said this to you before, but it's like having pride in like being that person that someone bought an animal from is like, this is the confidence I put in these people to start what my project is and where I want to work towards. So it's like, I want to put purple line into it. I want to put extreme red. I want to see what lemon ghost does in lav toffee. Should I have said that? No, because someone's probably writing it down. But it's like, it's okay. It's like, I want to see what these things do to it. Why? Because I really like lav toffee. And if it looks cooler by putting these things into it, I won't know until I do it. So it's like doing these projects and being able to have the opportunity to do them. Super cool. So ton of lav toffee stuff, but I think we talked about it. I'll probably end up pairing that Sable girl, trying to make some oxides. I think it's 3/8 chance to do that. I have a lavender het albino from Nate Miracle that I think I mentioned, one of his purple ones, which is super purple, really nice expression lavender. But it's from the red line, so it might have that in there. I could breed that to one of the super Arctics, Conda's het lav toffee albino, or I could breed it to a normal, or I could breed it to Arctic Conda or an Arctic. So it's like having the ability to do that with all of those triple heads is like probably the mainstay of what will end up happening here, like closer to September and October, just based on their ages and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm always trying to work on storm cloud stuff, always probably going to do more super Arctic snow stuff. Although, what's it called? I'm not sure. I might end up putting the purple line male in there with her just to see, but the only dilemma I have there is won't necessarily know exactly what's Arctic and what's not. I'll have to use my eyes instead of knowing that the dad was a super Arctic, because having that confidence and knowing like, oh, the dad was a super Arctic, I cannot mess this up.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. Like I am like a pusher for genetic testing because we have Arctic genetic testing.
Oh, game over.
It's gonna change things so much.
Oh, I would. How much are those? Like $50?
Probably something like
I,
that.
I'd,
Yeah.
I'd pay an extra $50 to not have to hold my breath for 2 years to make sure I was. So like 99% of my Arctics, I'm pretty confident like are. But
Yeah.
you always have that one like little tick in your brain. That's why I hold on that clutch I told you, the Arctic triple het lav toffee
Mm-hmm.
sale. Held on to them so long because they started off so small to the point where I was like, I need to confidently know that these are. And the ones that I've sold are like I know they are. Like you could literally put a cross through my chest. Like I know for a fact that they are. Versus like certain ones where I'm like, all right, this is more red, and that's where it gets rough, like red line and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, this is red, it's got more speckling. This is tough, it's got same belly, it's got certain signifiers, but it doesn't have that crisp frosted look that
Yeah.
like all of the art. And the thing is, like, I try to sell, like, it sounds stupid, but I sell the better Arctics because I'm like, I want to have the confidence that other people know that, like, I'm not
Yeah.
copping out and just being like, oh, it's definitely like
I agree.
it is what
Once
it
you
is.
add purple line or like any like line bred trait into the Arctic, it's hard. There's certain things are hard to differentiate in that.
Oh yeah, like
So
yeah, and I don't care who you are. Nobody would ever get all Arctic correct on like a flashcard thing. I don't like 99 out of 100 maybe, but not every single one because
no, I
Arctic
agree.
can be really high expression and beautiful, or it could look like a normal and then pop out Arctics. I've had friends who have had that happen
Mm-hmm.
where they pop the super Arctic out of like the most ugly, dirty, muddy looking female, and it turns out she just was. And it's like you can't deny what is made in front of you. You can't say she's not an Arctic when she popped that out. So it's
Yeah,
like
no, for
stuff
sure.
like that.
So with your parents stuff like that, and then you doing shows last year, are you planning to do more shows this year, like more consistently, or you're gonna do about the same amount?
So last year I think I did 4 shows.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of based on around where my breeding season was. I may and I may not. So like some of the shows in New England are pretty reasonable to get to and stuff, but a lot of them are hard to get into just because of the fact that New England's like kind of so tight knit. It's only a few
Yeah,
states. So like the big one up in New Hampshire, timing wise of having good clutches and stuff like that and making it worthwhile to go up there and certain stuff. If all goes well, 100%, I'd like to vend more. But it's like I tell people, it's up to the snakes. It's like I'm just here to babysit them. Like right
yeah,
now, Avery has her Insanopath female, her purple extreme red Conda that's 66 head albino or 100%. I don't remember exactly. But she's paired to the Color Blast, like 20 years plus line male that I have. That's just like friggin' forever's worth of line breeding that. And it's like that right there is like, I got him 2 years ago and I would not have like the 20 years of line breeding is like, as beautiful as those animals will be that I pop out, I still won't tell the people at the show that I'm responsible for them.
yeah,
I still will tell people that this is years of other people's lives and work. And because like it's a price point, and not to go too off tangent at the end, but like price point wise, people sometimes that aren't akin to hognose prices will look at like a Bub's Daddy or a Toxic and be like, that's this much. And the easiest way to describe it to them is like, well, this required a het to a het and then making double hets. And
yeah,
unfortunately, when they first started off, we can make these in only about one season now. But when they first started, this took like 7-8 years for them to even
yeah.
get to. And that's people's lives. And then they're really understanding about that. So it's like in that aspect, that it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, yeah. I've explained that to many people at the shows. It's you're paying for the time basically of what it took to create that animal.
Mhm.
And once you start explaining to them like how the genetics work, they're like, "Oh wow, I thought you just paired snakes and you got things together and that's how it worked."
Exactly.
And it's just not they don't have the information. That's all it is.
But
Um,
then you get to talk to them about it like crazy. So
mhm.
it's like that is my favorite. Like I would love to do more shows. Like I only had one show last year, so I mean, if you talk to anyone who has talked to me at a show, I'm just a yaposaurus. I talk from beginning to end. I only had one show last year where that didn't happen, which was kind of a bummer because I just like talking about hognoses and
Yeah.
talking to people about hognoses kind of quite 2.5 hours. Uh, but it's like I could just go nonstop
Yeah.
because it's like it's something that makes me happy, and I like hearing about other people's projects and seeing and hearing like the excitement in their voice and like knowing like. And the thing is, like, I don't discount. Like, I hated snow at first, and now I love snow. And I hated toffee at first, and now I love toffee. It's like you got to find your niche. I didn't have any toffee for like the first year and a half, and I went, man, I'm an idiot. This
Yeah.
makes so many different beautiful morphs, and it itself is beautiful.
Yep.
So I go to shows, I just yap to people the same exact way, and I just hope that I make one more person love hog noses. Hopefully, I don't turn anyone off. Like God, I gotta deal with people like that. Like hopefully not.
I think that's a great like mission. Like just talking to people and getting one more person to love hognose as much as we do. It's
Like
a
you said,
mission. It's a mission accomplished at a show. I think to me it's great selling, snakes, stuff like that. But if I can give somebody the information to be able to make a educated decision to get one or not to get one, it's so much. It's so accomplishing to me. And then you never know. I always tell people it's like, especially that young, maybe 10 to like 18-year-old or even like 20-year-old that's looking to get into it. You know where they're going to be 10 years from now. They could be the next biggest thing in the reptile world, right?
which is exciting as heck
Yeah.
because you're like I don't understand where someone would be like, oh, well, you're doing better than me. I would be like, man, like you came in later and are doing better. That's incredible. Like this person has to be passionate.
Hmm.
Like it like that's where again bringing it back to like where this is a competition. It's not for some people it is, and
Yeah,
those
of course.
like that you got to be at a different level for it to be there. But for a lot of people, they aren't there yet, but still see it as that. And it's like you do that, and then you lose the love for it. Then all of a sudden, you become spiteful towards your animals. You start being funky with them, and it's no longer about taking care of living beings that you then want to see create more incredible living beings. It becomes just stale and disgusting feeling.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of us have probably gotten to that point where you feel like it's a job, but it kind of is. You have a job and a responsibility to them. You
Hmm.
chose to buy them, you chose to bring them into this planet. And unfortunately, they can't do these things for themselves because we are choosing to breed them. We're choosing to, in a way, profit off of their existence. And because of that, we owe it to them to give them the proper life. Because if we
Yeah.
don't, then like you said earlier, I feel like that bad karma comes back around.
Yeah. And you know what, man? Like if if that love isn't there, if that like want to really take care of these animals not there, when the hard times get hard, you're easy gonna crack. You're easily gonna get, and that's another thing too I've mentioned where, since I've really been into the reptile community, um, in other species, you see people selling out their collections all the time, right? On Facebook, pages, on Instagram, people post it.
Yeah, just
Now,
liquidating.
yeah, now we're seeing it happen with hognose. Um, and for whatever reason, I know life comes about and stuff that you can't,
Well, I
look
mean,
down and stuff like that.
you'd
But
have to not be very in tune with the hobby to have noticed certain
yeah,
changes. It shocks a lot of us where we're like,
mhm,
man, really?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
mean, yeah, I feel like we both have similar things on the mind where it's like, you're just like, wow, I can't believe. But exactly like you said, life happens. And it's
life
like,
happens. Yeah, yeah. And if if either life happens or if it's an animal passing that you can't recover from, you know, um, that's when I think it
happened
really,
with me with that female.
really,
Not to
really
throw it
like,
again, but I was on the ground crying, just like, I can't keep doing this.
yeah,
Like it
yeah,
just hurts so much where you're just like, you love them so much that it's like, you just want to understand and you love them, but you also don't want it to happen to them, but know it will happen to them
yeah,
eventually with someone else. So it's
yeah.
like, do you
And,
pass
and
that
then
on?
and then the opposite feeling of seeing those little heads pop out of those eggs, it's like that
The
feeling of seeing
life
that it's so cool, man. And
there
that's one
is
thing that I tell people is when people find out that I'm a snake breeder, right? And I thought it's really, this is my job now, but it's not really a job, right? It's like that cliche is like, yeah,
You love
what
your
is,
job.
yeah, you won't really work a day in your life, right?
Exactly.
And realistically, that's how I feel, to this day now. um if the day I've said this to myself, and luckily seeing, being in tune with the community, being in tune with, bigger breeders and stuff like that, having those, connections and stuff like that, it's like seeing how they've have had the longevity and stuff like that. It's another big, thing to keep, what's it called, a pay attention to. um we all, we're humans, right? We want to try to reinvent the wheel. We want to try to, have a better way to do it, this and that. But if you think that you're gonna outdo or outsmart some of these guys have been doing, let's say Hognose for 15, 20 years, they've been
Yeah,
doing it for a
not
reason,
happening.
and not just producing Hognose, but having, um,
Having the
you know,
stability and consistency.
stability, consistency, having a good customer base, having a good reputation where people say, "Hey, I've gotten this animal multiple times from this person, and it's always great." Of course, there's that one off because we are working with animals that,
It
you know
happens.
it happens, right? You've experienced it, I've experienced it. It happens, right? But to have that longevity where people can say, "Hey, this guy or this girl is solid. You don't have to worry about it." For somebody to say, "Oh, they've been 2, 3 years doing it and they have good reputation," but 10 years down the line to do that, 15 years down the line, it has something really, 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 really big to say
There's
about
weight
that
to
person.
that,
100%. Yeah.
especially in this industry.
Yep. And
Like,
multiple species too, as well. That's another thing you look into. Like somebody that's produced multiple species over the years and has had success, is they're in tune with those animals. They really are doing something because they love it. Um,
that's one thing that I initially I got confused with larger breeders was I was thinking that there was like such a disconnect where they just didn't really care and they were able to just throw stuff away. But what I kind of like, I don't know for sure, but what I kind of like came to the realization was in especially like with this last loss that I kind of mentioned, and is like I don't think it's they're able to disconnect and just like not have a heart towards it. I think that they love doing this so much and have loved doing this because like you said 15, 20 plus years, even 10 years,
mhm.
have loved doing this so much that even in our first like few years of doing this, we've experienced several losses and it happens. But knowing that it does happen and having the strength to just be like, man, this really is rough, but I love doing this and to keep going is like it's really tough. And once you get those important losses, and I say important because it's like it's so unexpected, but like it happens and it will happen. It's like once you get those, it really like lets you know like, am I doing this because I love it? Or like am I doing this for money? Because like certain stuff will really test you. And it's
Yep.
like
Yep.
stuff like that is like, man, I really wanted those because she was Posset Toffee Belly. I really wanted the Super Arctic Toffee Condas Het Lab. I really wanted those. And that made me breed her. And in the end, it ended up killing her. And
Yeah.
that makes me feel awful. And I could stop trying to go for that project and stop trying to do all of that because of that. Or I could just kind of like swallow it up and just be like, man, I really like if I wasn't doing enough then, like I'm going to be now, and I'm going to be on top of this and making sure. And even if there was 0.0% chance of me helping her, it's like
Yeah.
that stuff like that steps your mental game up, and it's like
Yeah.
bring it back to the larger breeders is like they definitely they definitely have to have so much love for this because at that point you're definitely having if even at 10% loss it's gotta hurt animals you gotta just like be so attached to just gone and it's like
Mhm.
it's painful but
Yeah.
hopefully not saying that we get to the point where we're losing several animals but hopefully once we get to that point, we're able to just kind of like remember back to talking about this and be like, that's why we do it.
Yep.
It's
Yeah,
like,
and that I've heard from ball python breeders where ball pythons are tanks, man. And for you to really, for something to happen to ball python, it has to go south and stuff like that.
yeah,
Um, so it's interesting. That's why another thing I always say is I've paid a lot of attention to the ball python world because they are the trail leaders in the reptile community and
yeah, genetic morph
producing genetics stuff
producing.
like that. There's a lot of knowledge to be heard from them. We can't count those guys out or girls people those people out because there is a lot of information there. um it might not directly correlate to our species that we keep, but there is a general consensus, a general idea of what we're doing about the same thing, right?
Reptile keeping and
Hmm.
husbandry.
Hmm. Yeah, man. So last words, how can people find you? What are you looking forward to seeing this year, either your collection or just stuff you've heard through the grapevines coming this year?
So where to find me? At Melo Hogs, MELO _HOGS on Instagram, Brandon Melone on Facebook. That's my name. Uh, Morph Market as well. Should be Melo Hogs on there. But I think I mentioned it earlier. I'm more excited to see what everyone produces with the animals that I kind of made, because that's
Yeah.
like in my head, that's like the next step in my like hognose breeder journey. Isn't like just producing animals. It's like people producing animals with the animals that I produced, and
Hmm.
hopefully making those, like getting that same message of like, look at what popped out. Like when you finally like I tell customers this, like in even not customers, people that come up to my table. I was like, you have any questions, reach out to me 365, 24/7. Like, I don't care if it's 2 a.m. and you have a question. Like, because I know I'll forget sometimes. I was like, reach out, send me a text. It's like, even if I don't answer immediately, like I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. I haven't been the
Yep.
best because I've been dealing with some stuff, but I've been getting better recently again. But that is like, I just want people to actually enjoy and love hog noses and not be like, because I've dealt with early on, you may have, I dealt with a couple scummy people that weren't in it for the best intentions, ended up getting burnt on some stuff, but it happens. I haven't been seeing people like that much in the hobby
Hmm.
recently, and that's incredible to me. So like now that it's more at a place where people are just excited about projects, I just want to see people, with, I've said it several times. All right, so Lav Toffee. I want to see people make crazy Lav Toffee stuff
There
this
we go, people. Laugh toffees. That's what we need to see. And if you have a
year.
laugh toffee or if you have a project, message message Brandon and send him information about it. Um,
I love it.
Brandon, thanks again for joining us tonight. Thank
Thank
you
you
for
for
everybody
having me, Laura.
that joined us, had all the comments and questions. You know, let's keep building this community. Again, make sure you guys go check out Brandon's Instagram. The link is in the description below. And we'll see you guys on the next one. And have a good night.